Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of us analyzing the lore of Bloodborne in the Fear the Old Lore series. Yesterday, we continued to go through the Upper Cathedral Ward. We defeated the Celestial Emissaries and the Lumenflower Gardens here. We got all the choir set. We received the Make Contact gesture. And then we did die to Ebrietus a little bit, so I didn't finish her off just to continue on with the story. So from that point, we went to the Nightmare of Mensis, and we uh, beat Michaelash, the leader of the School of Mensis. We dropped down the Brain of Mensis, and we got up to uh, right before Murgo's Loft and the Lunarium, and we did see Queen Yarnum, and we talked about all of the bits of the lore going up to that part of the game. So, uh, off stream, I did level up a little bit by trying to grind out some of the vermin from the online co-op, so that way we could progress with Walter's quest later on in the game. We have not gotten any of these vermin yet, and I will read these descriptions. Hey Soda, nice to see you again, even if it's on your alt. Hope you get to stick around a bit for the stream, and if you got classes, understandable. Go get that education, son. So vermin are a centipede-like creature discovered on successful hunts by League hunters. Vermin, found hidden within filth, are only seen by League Confederates and are the root of man's impurity. The League has assumed the task of finding and crushing all vermin. Perhaps there is some mercy in the madness. Those who wish to see vermin can, and those who choose to are provided with boundless purpose. So, of course, the vermin is tied to the League and Vulture, and it does punch up the dial in terms of whether or not what the hunters or the characters in the world can find in the waking world is a true and to be a kind of overlapping between them. And in Dark Souls, for example, if enough characters like believe in the power of a miracle, it can become true to a certain degree. And I think that kind of principle might also be at play with the vermin. It's interesting that it says that those who wish to see them can, because we will find out later on that Vulture can no longer see the vermin, so it's questionable whether he no longer wishes to, or exactly how that works out in his situation. I will bring up again that when it talks about the root of man's impurity in Japanese, that it's more like the source of human stagnation, or like as they call it in Dark Souls 3, like human dregs. I'm not entirely sure if those are supposed to like fully carry over. And the idea of the vermin being found in the blood and the blood's impurities is tied to Kegare, or impurity, and like all of the Canehurst themes that we have present within that. Rise is interested to see how this relates to Yamamura and how he went insane. Um, is Yamamura a League Confederate? I think he is, and you can summon him for like the One Reborn if you unlock him early, right? I don't fully remember, but it is also interesting to consider like if Yamamura is far to the east and he was chasing a beast, like how widespread beasthood is, or if it's just all in his head, because when we find him, he's not exactly in the most sane of conditions. And one final thing that I'll bring up, or I guess there's two small points with the vermin, is they are linked to the idea of writhing, and that's found hidden within filth. And there's the amount of purity. Oh, maybe that's not in the English. Yeah, so it says vermin found hidden within filth are only seen by League Confederates. Whereas in the Japanese, it says like that they writhe within the impurities, and so it does use the same kanji that comes up in relation to like the Erden Rhythrun, if I remember correctly. And so that just kind of does tie into um, what we will find in like the research hall, and possibly like the imposter Yosefka, things like that. And so just to kind of reiterate or rephrase the little final section of the paragraph, or the final paragraph, It says, perhaps there may be mercy, since only those who desire it can see them and are given an endless mission. And so that idea of the endless mission just does play into that idea that perhaps the League Confederates have started to go mad themselves, because if it's a mission that can't be ended, it's most likely because it's stemming from what they're perceiving in the world rather than what is in the world. Or, conversely, just maybe Walter is right and he's not mad, and things really are covered in filth, and it's a terrible kind of world that he's seeing. And going back to chat, we have Yamamura stared into vermin or something insane. Oh, is that right? Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, we will see it later. I just don't remember everything off the top of my head, unfortunately. So, we did level up a bit when we were getting those vermin and helping cooperators defeat some of the bosses in the area. So my health is a little bit higher. I did finally remember to re-equip my gems, and I've got like an extra 100 points of damage or something from it, so I definitely should have done that earlier. If I do continue to crash against Ebrietas, I will go ahead and summon like Damien here, just to like move the story along. Like, even though I don't like to rely on the summons, like this isn't necessarily like a personal playthrough, and my focus is more on the lore rather than the like the try-hardship. I know a lot of other streamers do focus on that kind of thing, so this the format of this stream is a little bit different from many of the other like vanilla Bloodborne playthroughs. Oh, camera. So it is also possible to get a visceral on Ebrietas. Oh, I forgot to use my bolt paper. I went through the trouble of getting it. Didn't even. So that does open up the possibility. When we visceral her head, she kind of bleeds that silvery color. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, so the gems really did make a huge difference, because I was at the soft level cap before of 50 skill. I only like leveled a couple points in the arcane to just use the echoes that I had. So that was a lot more smooth than yesterday, and pretty proud about that. So from defeating Ebrietas, we get the Great Eyes Chalice, which to me reveals that she should not be considered the source of the church's healing blood because of the description. Thank you for the GG. And to rise, Walter seems sane. Yeah, there is a very fine line, like, between straddling sanity and insanity, and I've brought this up before in the context of the game, that oftentimes it's impossible to distinguish, like, enlightenment from insanity. They do resemble each other, and that does come up, I think, in, like, perhaps it's the Madman set that we can get in the Intertomb Chalices from. And I probably will show that off just on a different character where I've already got that stuff looted. Did you give the summons to Alfred? No. So my goal was to defeat Ebrietas here, and then do all of the things in Cathedral Ward, like going to give the summons to Alfred, finishing up with the Bloody Crow and Eileen, then going to Canehurst to get Annalise's flesh, and then come back down here with Ebrietas cleared out. But thank you for reminding me. So, the Great Eyes Chalice is a chalice that breaks a labyrinth seal. Great chalices unlock deeper reaches of the labyrinth. The Great Eyes Chalice became the cornerstone of the choir, the elite delegation of the Healing Church. It was also the first Great Chalice brought back to the surface since the time of Bergenworth, and allowed the choir to have audience with Ebrietas. So, I know Redgrave believes that the Healing Church was using the blood of Ebrietas to like facilitate their blood ministration. I disagree with that, mostly because of what we find within this chalice description. Since the choir we know came about pretty late in the lifespan of the healing church. It doesn't seem to make much sense for me for Ebrietas to have been the source of their continued use of ministration. It wouldn't have explained why Lawrence came into contact with her blood to begin with, or how Bergenworth would have come into contact with the blood just through the chalices, because Bergenworth never encountered Ebrietas face to face. Like, this description should pretty explicitly point out that it was the choir that were the first ones to have like direct contact with her. And speaking on that point, there is a small discrepancy in the Japanese. Instead of saying like it allowed the choir to have audience with Ebrietas, it almost sounds like it's the other way apart, that it allowed the choir to be seen by Ebrietas, or like be met by her. So it's a very minor difference, but I'm not sure if it's totally insignificant. And so it may have been like Ebrietas was calling out for a while before somebody else finally found her, because she was the abandoned Great One, or the left behind Great One. And speaking of like abandoned and left behind, that could also be a synonym for like exiled Great One. So her status as a Great One and her relation to Thurmaru and Thumerian society is a bit of a mystery, unfortunately. And so, with her also like crying or potentially praying to this statue of what appears to be a Ram-like creature, if not Ram itself, it really does bring up a lot of questions, because we can encounter both Ram and Ebrietas in the Chalice dungeons. We find the Ram in like the central Thumuru Chalice, and Ebrietas in the deepest recesses of the Great Eyes Chalice. When Ebrietas does bleed, I did mention it's that silvery color. It's because she's akin to the cosmos. She's weak to bolt type damage, and if we look at the trophy description for the Great Eyes trophy, or Chalice trophy, it says, let me double check. The Chalice of Eyes. Acquire the Great Chalice of Eyes that seals the home of the Cosmic Kin. I believe that idea of the Cosmic Kin is what's associated with like the slugs and the phantasms, and the verse kin icon, which I think is that of a slug. And I'll bring that up just to show it off again. Alright, so Rise has to go. Alright, nice to see you again. Thanks for stopping by for when you could and supporting the stream. Have a good day. And so, Ebrietas does bleed that silver color. When she spits blood at you, it is a more like dark, deep red color, and it is a bit like unclear how like the different colors of blood all mesh together. Now, coming back to the Cathedral Ward after defeating Michaelash, we will find a certain NPC missing and a suspicious trail of blood going off in the background.
There ain't no more Sylvanums, damn it.
So the little guy doesn't say anything different, and if we follow this trail of blood, we will come into contact with, let's say, some eldritch horror type things. Rubito's alive here as well, just sleep deprived and nodding off, so he'll probably be quiet. Alright, nice to see you again as well. I don't know if you're around, but we just worked Ebrietas the first try today. So when we come down, we immediately gain some extra insight, and we come face to face with a terrifying scenario. We have what looks to be a celestial larva that's covered with like red blood or placenta, probably, and it's staring at Ariana and like making some kind of noises towards her. Examining Ariana more closely, she is extremely pallid, or potentially like drained of blood, maybe. with that interpretation. Her hair is no longer so lustrously blonde, and she is covering her face or her eyes, which might be reminiscent of the statues that are clutching their faces that we can find throughout Yarnum as well.
It can't be.
So there is also another set of dialogue which you will have. It's really hard to know about it. It took some extensive playtesting for people to figure out, and I will talk about that in just a moment. So after that bit of dialogue, she won't say anything different, and if you reload the area, nothing will happen because we did not use 5 of her blood vials. I suppose in hindsight, I could have just killed Adela to get her rune and show off that Ariana does have that special dialogue, and she says something to the fact that it's a nightmare and she's never been happier after we reload the area. So that's a really kind of well hidden Easter egg, and it might just show how insane she's gone. And she could just be saying that even her child is a nightmare. She just doesn't believe that what's going on is real. So even though she does seem somewhat sane, how can anybody truly feel sane if they gave birth to such a monstrosity over the course of one night? So if we attack the baby right now, we will gain a very special and very significant item, and Ariana will also die as a consequence of that, which the relationship between the two is very fascinating in that regard. It's unclear how that kind of psychic link works between them. If we do kill her and not the child will still stay alive and face her. So just to kind of show off that kind of bond they have between them, I'm going to just attack the baby first. Or not. So it's very clear that Ariana dies because she slumps over and she drops an item. I don't believe there's any real instances of somebody just passing out and dropping item in a Soulsborne game. I think it should be very clearly understood that she's died and she's not passed out of shock. So when we loot the little infant, we'll gain another third of an umbilical cord, or third cord. And from Ariana, we gain Ariana's shoes. Since I have a lot more to talk about with the cord, I'm just going to look at her shoes first. It says shoes worn by Ariana, Woman of the Night, in the Cathedral Ward, innocent and cute in contrast with its owner. So that just kind of might be a little bit of a jab at her character. I think the Japanese was similar, but just slightly different. Oh, it just says it's adorable and thus quite an ill-matched item. So these items don't necessarily or these shoes don't suit her if they're supposed to be cute and things like that. So going back to the cord itself, so it should be this one. Okay. A great relic, also known as the Cord of the Eye. Every infant great one has this precursor to the umbilical cord. Every great one loses its child and yearns for a surrogate, and Erden, the formless great one, is no different. To think it was corrupted blood that began this eldritch liaison. Used to gain insight, and so they say, eyes on the inside, although no one remembers what that truly entails. So that concept of forbidden blood is relevant in relation to Ariana, most specifically, because when we do re-examine her blood vial, it says that a member of the Healing Church would know that her blood is similar, indeed, to precisely what was once forbidden. So there is something to the quality of Ariana's blood, which is a better match to the nature of the formless Erden. And I tend to believe that since her blood can have like a kind of chiming effect that we find in like the Rosmarinus, or like leveling up with the doll with our blood echoes, or just like a bunch of the bell type sounds in general. And since Erden only exists in voice and its true essence is blood, I believe like that attachment is what's significant, because Adela's lacks that kind of aural quality of Ariana's blood vial. And yesterday I did go ahead and purchase the Rosmarinus just to kind of show off this effect. Now we have an interesting like choir effect which goes along with that. I don't believe I've read that item, so I will kind of go over that right now. I know I'm jumping over and around a bit, so please bear with me for a moment. So, the Rosmarinus is a special weapon used by the choir, high-ranking members of the Healing Church. It sprays a cloud of sacred mist created by using blood-imbued quicksilver bullets as a special medium. Arias are heard wherever sacred mist is seen, proving that the mist is a heavenly blessing. O fair maiden, why is it that you weep? I believe that final line is supposed to tie into Ebrietas, because we find her in the altar of despair, or in Japanese is it's called like the altar of grief, which is associated with like crying and weeping over the dead. So the Japanese, instead of saying that it's a sacred mist, it calls it an arcane mist. The same thing as the arcane stat, which does reinforce my belief that the arcane is tied to bells, arias, chimes, and I think that the choir may have gained their name by trying to kind of research that connection between the sound that might have been in like Forbidden Blood versus what's produced through bells and the Rosmarinus, because the other important choir item that we can get is the choir bell, and I don't think I've read that either after we picked it up. Oh, I'm in the ritual materials. Okay. So the choir bell is a special hunter tool of the choir, high-ranking members of the church, fashioned after a bell that projects an arcane sound across planes of existence. The sound of this smaller, silver version of the bell does not cross planes, but grants vigor and healing to all cooperators. And I think this is important to just kind of get a more explicit reference to what I've been talking about with the idea of the bells and that kind of sound being associated with the arcane. The choir bell does state that it is an arcane sound, and fascinatingly enough, it does restore HP, which is like the will to live. So I think we can kind of draw that connection between like some properties of the arcane being tied into blood and the willpower and the will to survive and HP and like blood echoes and all those kind of things. I think that was it that I wanted to talk about in relation to Ariana and the cord. Maybe there was something else in the Japanese for the umbilical cord that I'm forgetting. Just going to re-examine that real quick. Alright, so with the umbilical cord from Ariana, I don't know, I'm going from the top. It mentions that it was her corrupted blood which began this eldritch liaison. Of course, the term eldritch is just another way of stating arcane, and so that just shows that the arcane is also connected to Erden and these kind of umbilical cords, and that arcane intermingling is what allowed her to have that potential child of blood. And if we compare that idea to like what we find in the research hall, I think like the idea of like the infant experiments there kind of having skulls coming out of them might relate to Ariana's higher quality of blood and the kind of skulls that we can see emerging from the higher levels of the ritual blood, from which we can like extract arcane mist, which that's a tool we can get from the chalice dungeons, and we can use like the arcane mist extractor. I can't remember its name off the top of my head. Arcane haze extractor to extract like arcane mist from every ritual material. So now that Ariana's quest is done and there's no more like real utility to be had from the NPCs, maybe the old lady still has a quest. I'm gonna go ahead and kill Adela just to show that she also has the Erden Wraith rune. And I did forget to equip like the Canehurst rune to deal with the Bloody Crow Canehurst just to get the extra blood dreg. And in the earlier versions of the game, if you killed the NPCs, they would always drop blood dregs, and that got revised with the day one patch, if I remember correctly.
Welcome. What is? Very well.
Alright, can't level up, so I might just like buy a bunch of vials. The Cosmic Eye Watcher badge did unlock some more things for us. I don't remember what they are. I'll look it up later and tell us. Like, I suppose at this point in the game, it's not terribly important to just literally show them all off, as long as we know what they are and can talk about them. And I'll see if the old lady is still cognizant enough to continue everything. Some Alcoholic Geek, welcome back. Nice to see you again. Welcome to the stream. We just defeated Ebrietas and finished up the quest line for Ariana, and so I've been monologuing pretty heavily about all of that. Oh, Rubito's got it for us. Okay, thanks. I was just looking that up. The Rosmarinus, the Blue Elixir, sedatives, beast blood pellets, and poison knives. Oh, I should have bought beast blood pellets. So.
Welcome home, dear. What's wrong? Anything you'd like to tell me?
So you could say I have my own share of woes.
Oh my. Oh, now, have some patience. Mother will make everything better.
So, we've already exhausted how many sedatives she can get us. She says that she thinks like she's our mother, so she's obviously hallucinating or definitely not fully sane. Although this might be like attributed to senility, but I do think that like contrasts like how consistently abrasive she was to us towards the beginning of the game.
Now, be patient.
I don't remember what triggers her to say like you're just like your father. Maybe I need to attack her. But at this point in the game, she will like kind of wander off and die off to the side. Oh, maybe it was cut content when she said it's your father's blood. Let me double check this. Oh, okay, I see what it is. So she says it's your father's blood, and in the Japanese she says like Otosan ni nite. So it's like you're just like your father, or like you resemble your father. So that's what it was. It is when you kill her? You thought she was just high? Okay, so let's just go ahead and kill her, because if we leave her be, she'll just kind of like wander off, and we'll find her corpse just like laying down right here. So, like, we could assume that maybe like one of the church servants with their sticks killed her, or maybe it was her blood and she just kind of ran out.
It's your father's blood.
Okay, so she says it's your father's blood in the English, and in the Japanese, it's more like, oh, you're just like your father, which is pretty dramatic and what's the word? Tragic, perhaps. It's also nice to see you again, Herbert. That does remind me. Yesterday we had mentioned that there may have been the presence or the files for the moon presence in the Upper Cathedral Ward in the Lumenflower Gardens on chat yesterday, and I couldn't remember exactly if that was true or not, or if Lance had mentioned it. I did ask Lance about that and some other things, and he did confirm that that was not the case, so there is no file for the moon presence in the Lumenflower Gardens. We already talked to Eileen, so
My prey lies in wait, the turn.
she just says the same thing, and then we can go fight the bloody Canehurst and hopefully just not get destroyed by 2 normal gunshots this time. So he will also be able to rapidly poison us with his blood-tinged Chikage. Oh, I have my Rosemarinus on. That's not exactly good for parrying now, is it? So I'm just gonna run away for a second just to re-equip that. So it's already going better. He's not killed us in 2 hits, which might just be enough. His AI will break on these steps over here. I don't think he'll like regain his health if we run too far away, but I'm not fully sure. It's not something I typically do. He can heal, which can be a bit hard to deal with. So we could return the favor of him brutally sticking his hand in our chest from before, and of course my jumping attack misses point blank. Oh no. That's funny. I'm talking mad shit and then getting wrecked. Deserve that. So your father's blood seems like a higher level of analysis than is warranted by being beaten to death. Like she's speculating about your blood. You prefer the Japanese. Yeah, I agree with that. It might have just been like her dialogue changed and it just wasn't reflected in the English. I probably could have looked at it in Korean, but I just never thought about it, honestly. I mean, it was pretty clear that I was like misremembering even what she said in English, so it's not something I've really thought about a whole lot. The cut content was Patches being her son. Yeah, that's one of the things as well. I'm so not used to being able to just one-shot these guys. So yeah, like changing the blood gems really did make a huge difference. Like, I got pretty lucky with the Winter Lantern drops. They give like the best gems in the base game if you're not like going through the chalices. And it's a terrible, terrible grind in the chalices to get like the best kind of gems. Like you'll spend hundreds of hours trying to do that stuff potentially, because they've got like pretty terrible drop rates. So that's the old hunter bone. And when he sheathes his weapon like that, that's part of the EI strike of the Chikage. And it will increase his range and deal a ton of oh, I thought he was going to heal. Oof, I thought I was going to whip that. Okay, there we go. That was a close call. Unfortunately, we don't have any dialogue at all over that fight, so a lot of people really, really want to know more about the Bloody Crow Canehurst. We don't have anything else than this fight and what Eileen says, and like the items that it has, and So the most important thing that we can kind of learn about him is he carries the Blood Rapture rune. The other enemy which carries the Blood Rapture rune is the Shadows of Yharnam, and so that could set him up as to be a follower of Queen Annalise, the Blood Queen, and trying to kill hunters to offer blood dregs to her. Now that we've killed him, Eileen has some more special dialogue. Patches seems like the kind of character to secretly be a mama's boy. Yeah, I could see that for sure. You wonder who Patches' father is, who his father is then? He is in Demon Souls. Amazing. He boasts about how proud his mother would be. Oh, that's cool. I've never played Demon Souls, so I am a little bit excited to see it on the PS5. Not sure if I'll get it like as soon as it comes out, but maybe later on in the cycle if the price drops or my PS4 breaks. So enough about that. Now we've got Eileen to look at in her sorry state.
Don't you ever listen to your elders? No matter. You did save my life. I don't seem to be apt for this life anymore. My glory days were long ago now. I know. Here. For you.
So from Eileen we gain the Hunter rune and the Crow Hunter badge.
This too is hunter's work. But it bears no honor. A burden you may choose to carry. The decision is yours alone. Oh. My eyes grow heavy. Let me rest a while. I'll be fine. Just wait.
So, of course, that follows the huge Hollywood trope, oh, let me rest my eyes, I'm tired, just a couple more minutes, and then the character kind of dying immediately following that. For the case of Bloodborne, this will happen off-screen, so it's supposedly ambiguous whether or not Eileen dies or just absconds off into the night. I tend to believe that, she'll die because I feel like the From Software games tend to dial up the melodrama of the tragedy of these kinds of situations. And then that's pretty much it for Eileen and her quest. We can kill her now, since her body is going to disappear. It's a dick move. I think she just has like a very little bit more to say from it.
You can't go on like this.
And then from her we gain some more blood dregs. So now that we've done like the biggest dick thing that we can for this like location, we're gonna go talk to Alfred and present him the summons to Canehurst. F's in the chat for Eileen. Oh, poor old hag. Getting betrayed by her Kohai right there. So Alfred is still where he was from before. He's still pretty sane despite like the blood moon being out. And I say pretty with a bit of an asterisk because that will be called into question very shortly. You choose to believe Patches' father is the bigoted old man and he hasn't spoken to his wife in 20 years like that guy in that Japanese variety show, so that's why they don't talk about each other. That story is pretty wild. I know exactly what you're talking about, but...
Oh, good to see you safe. Now, let's think up something to discuss. Just tell me what piques your interest. I bid you may the good...
May as well get some more of the cinematic qualities to follow this. So zoom in on his goofy face.
There must be oodles for us to share. Go on. Just tell me what piques your interest.
Alfred always with his oodles.
Aha! Is that the sigil of Canehurst? I've heard tell of Canehurst nobles and their amusingly pompous invitations. Wonderful. I thank you profusely. I will depart immediately, but first, a token of my gratitude.
He gives us the Wheel Hunter badge, which gives us access to the Executioner's items from the Bath Messengers, and we'll find out more about that in just a moment. And the Church Bow, the male version.
Ah, I feel my master's hand at work. Praise the good blood, and let us cleanse these tarnished streets.
I'm pretty sure that the Japanese for that is pretty much the same. Oh, he just says instead of like his master's hand at work, he just says like his master's intentions. Let me double check. Is that supposed to be Ishii? Yeah. So it's not like his dying wills, but very very small like flavor differences. And instead of just saying like praise the good blood, it's more like thanks to the blessing of blood, which just does tie into my points from earlier in the other episodes that the idea of there being good blood and bad blood is presented much more strongly in English, whereas in Japanese it's much more muted, and it's more like just impurities in general in the blood. And so I think the more impure the blood becomes, like the closer to greatness it becomes, and that's why we get like the children of blood, blood dregs, and like the different levels of cold blood and all that kind of stuff. So yes, his sanity comes into question soon. He was mad when Patches was born since the old dear stopped paying attention to him and he became jealous, so he stopped talking to her for 20 years. All my wildest theories about the bigoted old man. Oodles. Garamond, nice to see you again. Welcome back. We just defeated Ebrietas, continued on with Ariana and Alfred's quests. And so that concludes this section of it. He doesn't really say anything different. We're going to head to what's it called? The Hunter's Dream. Look at the new items we just received. And then head on over to Canehurst. Clearly, the bigoted old man is the mastermind behind the discoveries of the choir in the healing church. He figured it all out with his own mind, of course. Since the loading screen is going to take a minute, I'm just going to look at the Crow badge first. So the Crow Hunter badge is a badge of a hunter of hunters who hunts those who have become addled with blood. The badge of the Hunter of Hunters is quietly passed down from generation to generation, usually to an outsider from the hinterlands. To be entrusted with this cursed badge, one must be strong, resilient to the seduction of blood, and gracious when taking a comrade's life. So this does set up that potentially all hunters, or at least hunters of hunters, were foreigners. I think that might tie into why there's a mistrust of foreigners from the Arnhemites, especially if they're starting to become more fed up the hunts in general. The past couple of hunts with like Old Yarn and burning down, them seeming to become more distrustful towards the healing church. If we examine things really closely, it's passed down from only one person between generations. It's a little bit more clear in the Japanese, so that does contradict the potential that Bloody Crow of Canehurst himself was a hunter of hunter, despite having like the Crow Hunter garb on. And rather than saying that they came from the hinterlands, in Japanese it just says they came from a remote foreign land, or potentially like remote foreign lands. It's not clear if it's singular or plural. I tend to believe that it's just unclear, and so it could just be anywhere. And strength, not being drunk with blood, and forgetting respect can be entrusted this cursed badge. So what it says in Japanese is extremely close. And so the idea of there being like a kind of honoring of the dead while they're hunting is pretty important, I think, to understanding like the role of a hunter of hunter, and I think that ties into the style of Gehrman's fighting as well. We will be able to get the Blades of Mercy from the shop now, and there is a kind of parallel between the Blades of Mercy and Gehrman's Burial Blade in that they're both created out of siderite, which is a kind of a meteoric alloy, like an iron, just comes from the meteors and things like that. So the idea that if they are like from the meteors might like lead into the potential that there's like a element of the cosmos within the weapons themselves. Where's the Blade of Mercy? Okay, here it is. So the Blade of Mercy is a special trick weapon passed down among hunters of hunters. One of the oldest weapons of the workshop. Splits into two when activated. The weapon's warped blades are forged with siderite, a rare mineral of the heavens, most effective in swift attacks such as after quick-stepping. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I do think the design of this is somewhat similar to the type of sickles that the Thumerian descendants wield in the Canehurst Chalice, or not Canehurst, but in the Thumerian Chalice dungeons. So the idea of trick weapons existing may have been partially due to influences from Thumeru originally, because they can kind of firearms or similar type weapons in the dungeons as well. Now let's examine the Wheel Hunter badge. I think it's down here. Yep. So, Martyr Logarius led a band of executioners, and this badge was crafted at their dedicated workshop. The wheel symbolizes righteous destiny. Their workshop was a secretive enclave of mystical beliefs and heady fanaticism, which served as the backbone of the executioner's unique brand of justice. And of course, I've mentioned this before, but like in the Japanese version of the game, the type of executioners associated with the healing church have the dan suffix added to it. So like the Shokedan would be the executioner squad, whereas the executioner gloves do not have that suffix, and it does state that it's from a foreign land. So I believe we should consider the two items as being unrelated, despite having a shared name in both English and Japanese. It is unfortunate, just like how muddy the two or the term is like thrown about and used in the game. Let me double check. So the saying it's an enclave of mystical beliefs is perfectly fine in my opinion. The term that they use for mystical is related to the arcane stat as well, but I don't necessarily think like it literally means the arcane stat in this context. It's just like I think a better way to have translated arcane is mystic to begin with. So it's like let me try to find it. Like Shinpi Shugi, which is like arcane ism, so like mystical. It's probably did a very poor job explaining that right there, but from the executioner wheel we can gain, or the Logarius, wait, what is it? The Wheel Hunter badge. We can gain the access to like the wheel, the Logarius wheel, which is a weapon wielded by Martyr Logarius' band of executioners. It's used to slaughter the vile bloods in Canehurst, bathed in the pools of their blood and forever steeped in their ire. Transformed to release the power of the wheel and manifest their lingering rage in a show of utter brilliance. I do not have enough echoes to purchase this right now. I don't think I have the stats to wield it. Yeah, I don't have the strength, otherwise I would buy it. I'd just pop some cold blood. But if you do try to like trick or activate that weapon, it will create a kind of like a ghastly effect. Like you'll see like the skulls in a similar manner to what we find on the Executioner gloves and in Logarius' attacks, or like what can pop out of the ritual blood. And I don't think we can buy the golden Ardeo from this as well. So the gold Ardeo is part of the Executioner set. We do not find it in Cainhurst itself. So once we gain access to the badge, we can purchase it from the shop. So the odd helmet worn by the band of executioners commanded by the martyr Logarius. The conical or conical gold helmet, symbol of the executioners, represents luminosity, ambition, and an unflagging resolve to face impurity, staring it down with stern golden spirit. As the great Logarius once said, acts of goodness are not always wise, and acts of evil are not always foolish, but regardless we shall always strive to be good. So I think that idea of having resolve to face impurity is supposed to tie into how Cainhurst is the impure blood clan, and I've brought that up many times before. And Ardeo comes from Latin and it means to like be on fire, burning, blazing, flashing, glowing, sparkling, be raged, and to be like filled with turmoil or love. So that just kind of shows how zealous the executioners are in their mission, I think. And I think that's it. I don't remember if there's anything else from that badge to look at. Oh, right, we can buy Eileen's things now. So we can get the Crow Feather Garb and the Beak Mask, and like the Crow Feather set from the Crow Hunter badge, obviously. So the Crow Feather Garb is attire worn by Eileen the Crow, Hunter of Hunters. It's known in particular for her Crow Feather Cape. Hunters of Hunters dress as crows to suggest sky burial. The first Hunter of Hunters came from a foreign land and gave the dead a virtuous native funeral ritual rather than impose a blasphemous Yharnam burial service upon them, with the hope that former compatriots might be returned to the skies and find rest in a hunter's dream. So this does very much tie into the idea of like why the Yharnamites might have been chaining their coffins, because like their blasphemous burials could have led to the dead reanimating, either in like the cramped caskets that we can find in Yahar'gul, or potentially like reanimating in the forms of like beast, maybe reminiscent of what we see with Gilbert popping out of his home after he says he'll die a human. He becomes a beast later on. So the idea of leaving like the corpses out to the sky to be devoured by crows is it seems to have like a lot of significance. Of course, we don't necessarily know if that is true, and like leaving them out for a sky burial will avoid that kind of grisly fate of turning into a beast later on, or reanimating as a dead creature. We don't know that. We could assume that since like the carrion crows that we find in Yharnam feast on the corpses, that like it still might not be a very good idea, just because leaving out these carcasses that have imbibed this dangerous blood can still cause other types of organisms to not necessarily evolve, but like transform if they eat those themselves, or like if they eat those corpses. And the very final line does different Japanese, and instead of saying like they might be returned to the skies and find rest in Hunter's Dream, it says this way the dying wishes of their comrades will at least reach heaven, or perhaps the Hunter's Dream. So the dying wishes, of course, like the echoes. So in Japanese it might be like if you leave something out, their echoes might be able to freely go into the Hunter's Dream. And so I think that ties into the idea of the dream and the nightmares being composed from like the echoes and things like that, or like the echoes do travel up there to kind of create what we can find in those locations. The set is pretty similar all around, just her beak mask does specify that it contains incest to mask the sense of blood and beasts. So that might have been helpful in the case of like a hunter like Gascoigne, who was driven mad by this acrid stench that was attached to his clothes and caused him to become drunk or mad with bloodlust. Alright, I think that's it for the new items. We do have the Hunter of Hunter's rune to examine, the Covenant rune, and that reminds me I do need to switch my rune back up again for when we access the DLC later. Now that we've got like all the blood drugs we should need. So when we teleport back to the Vile Blood Queen's chamber, we will find Alfred in a very interesting position.
Master, look! I've done it! I've done it! I've smashed and pounded and grounded this rotten siren into fleshy pink pulp. There, you filthy monstrosity! What good's your immortality now? Try stirring up trouble in this sorry state. All mangled and twisted, with every inside on the outside for all the world to see.
So he has some, very, very sane, very friendly, laughter following that. Definitely not evil, not insane. He's completely covered with blood. He's using the Logarius wheel, which I find to be interesting because if we try to fight Alfred before he transfers to this location, he wields the Kirk hammer. He does not don the Golden Ardeo. So that to me does raise a lot of questions as to whether or not he found these items when he was on his way through Canehurst or something like that. And why wasn't he here to begin with in like the first part of the raid, and why does he think he's successful and all of the other executioners were not? And we will find that he talks about how he's grounded Annalise's insides on the outsides and mashed her up every which way, and that is true to an extent. This is the remains of the undead Vile Blood Queen Annalise, and if we inspect the chair we can see that it is kind of writhing eerily, and from it we can gain the queenly flesh, and if we inspect it again it says it writhes eerily, which I think like that idea of writhing might be important in this context as well. It's not entirely clear. And if we examine, she's got some of her insides on the outside next to her helmet.
Oh, you, is it? Look at this. Thanks to you, I've done it. Well, isn't it wonderful? Now Master can be canonized as a true martyr. I've done it. I have.
And then he gives us the very, very cool roar gesture, and this concludes Alfred's quest. Well, like the bulk of it. At this point in the game, if you leave him be, he will return to where we found him in the first part of Cathedral Ward, by the kind of like tomb honoring probably Martyr Logarius, the one with the like kind of Ardeo-esque head covering on it. But if we attack him now, he will have a little bit more dialogue, and I do intend to do that. But before getting into that, I would like to bring some attention to his dialogue. When he says he's grounded this rotten siren into a fleshy pink pulp, the idea of calling her rotten relates to impurity. He says like it's let me double check. Kagarata Ona, which is like this impure, vile woman. So that just ties everything back to Canehurst and their affiliations with impurity. We see his wheel itself is covered with the same kind of fleshy pink mass of the late queen, who is not completely dead, even despite being put into this sorry state. And one thing that I believe Herbert likes to bring up in conjunction with all this and theory crafting of like why Annalise may have been put into that horrid silver mask and things like that is at one point she may have been like very beautiful, and it would have been very easy for her to seduce people into working for the Canehurst Vilebloods in opposition to the Healing Church. And so that may be why he, I guess it's not in English, try stirring up trouble in this sorry state is what he says in English, but in Japanese he's like, even if you're immortal somehow, you'll probably never be able to do anything or seduce anyone if you live forever like this, like mashed into this pulpy flesh. So the idea that Canehurst might use like some more of their sexuality, whereas the Healing Church represses it, could be a potential reading into this. I don't read into it that deeply myself, but I do like to bring that up just to give like other people more perspectives into the lore of the game. I'm perfectly fine with people having disagreements or altering interpretations. I find it to be like one of the most fun aspects of analyzing stories in general. So the man Herbert himself is here to say, yeah, her seduction is her power. So by forcing her to wear a mask, you diminish her power. See, I personally don't think there's enough evidence to fully be on board with that, but I can see where you're coming from. So I do appreciate you bringing that up and putting that idea out there into the community. So now that we have pretty much done that, I am going to attack Alfred, because I'm on a roll of committing evil deeds for the sake of the lore.
You're jealous, aren't you?
Bloody fool! Has the blood gone to your head?
So I do like that he questions our
Get it! As you deserve!
our sanity and our like bloodlust, because if we just kind of look at him, he seems very, very concerned with like, or I'm phrasing this poorly because I'm distracted, but he seems not quite sane himself. He seems as though he's the one who's like filled with rage and bloodlust, but perhaps he's not, you know, like this may have been his entire mission. And one of the shocking things about Alfred is he seems like he's a fellow good guy, like on our side. He's been supportive of the character throughout our night of the hunt, and so we think by like sending him to Canehurst, like we're just helping him fulfill his quest. We don't necessarily realize that he has the goal of murder on his mind, just as much as we have like the goal of murder on our minds when we encounter all sorts of beast and eldritch type of monstrosities as we continue through our hunt over the night. I think that might be like the extent of what he says, and it just maybe like his death quote. And he heals himself. He can do a decent amount of damage. Ooh. Thought the unintended lunge was going to get me. Oh, I'm out of stamina.
Pray for Master Ligarius in my stead.
So killing Alfred, we gained the Radiance rune. And if we did let him continue on with the rest of his quest, like he wouldn't have said anything else, we just would have found him dead next to Martyr Logarius. or like the little tomb potentially honoring Logarius, and we would have gained the Radiance Rune from his corpse. And it might have been a case of suicide in that scenario. So now that we've gotten the Radiance Rune, we'll go ahead and examine that as well as the rune that we obtained from Eileen. So all the oath runes will be like towards the bottom of the screen. Easy to remember. So the Radiance is a secret symbol left by Carol, the runesmith of Bergenworth. The rune for Radiance, adopted by the sworn executioners under Logarius' command. The executioners despise the impure vile bloods, and no matter what the circumstances, would never cooperate with the bloodthirsty hunters who serve the undead queen Annalise. And of course, this does reinforce that the vile bloods are impure, because they despise the impure vile bloods. And just with the idea of the undead queen Annalise in Japanese, there isn't a very good distinguishing a way to distinguish between like undead that we would call things in English versus immortal or like amortal, something that never lived. So it could be saying that Annalise is undying, or she is immortal, or she may already be undead. It's a bit ambiguous in that regard. Looking at the Japanese, it's pretty similar. So no real noteworthy differences between those two, I think. And going to the Hunter rune, we have a Carol rune that transcribes inhuman sounds. This red smudged rune means hunter and has been adopted by those who have taken the Hunter of Hunters oath. These watchmen admonish those who have become addled with blood, be they men or beasts. Anyone who has threatened the pledgers of the Hunter oath surely has an issue with blood. So I personally don't like that description very much. I'll just go ahead and read the Japanese now so we can compare them. The enemies of hunters, or like hunters of hunters, drunk with blood, are hunters who resonate with ominous, that is like sinister bells. Or perhaps, if they oppose the hunting contractors, whatever they are, it is a sign of blood drunkenness. My apologies for just kind of reading that really poorly right there. So, I think the biggest takeaway is, I think it's just a bit clearer that in the Japanese, those who oppose hunters of hunters are thought to have affiliations with the sinister bells, and because of that, they can be thought to be blood drunk. So that's kind of the bigger takeaway, I think, with that description. Now, the Hunter rune in general does fascinate me quite a bit, because this is exactly the same kind of rune that we see in the Bold Hunter's Mark and the Hunter's Mark that we have on us in the beginning of the game. As an oath rune, it's kind of useless. I mean, it gives stamina recovery speed up, which is nice, but I mean, like, I don't know, you'd expect, based on the effects of the Hunter's Mark and the Bold Hunter's Mark, it would be different somehow, something more related to death or something along that nature. And the fact that it's associated with Hunters of Hunters as opposed to, like, I don't know, the Moon Presence is also fascinating to me. We can find the Hunter symbol within, like, all of the Thumerian Chalice dungeons. It's on doors, it's on tombstones. It seems to predate the events of Yharnam, which leads me to believe that, like, Hunters are associated with this rune because it is their role to go out and kill things that have become blood-addled and to, like, set their echoes free. And I think, like, the role of the Hunter over the night is to, like, go ahead and, like, gather these kind of echoes to bring them back into the Hunter's dream. And, like, essentially we're like the Grim Reaper, so to speak, of the Bloodborne universe. And that might tie into potential ways to read the Moon Presence if you don't think, like, that the Hunter is a complete agent for the Moon Presence. It could be that the Moon Presence is kind of like co-opting the role of the Hunter and what's the word? Like extorting the hunters and stealing all of these echoes for itself because of its like insatiable hunger for like blood echoes and the life that we can bring her. So I realize that does stray a bit from like the topic at hand, but I do like to bring it up just because it is like one of those things that we have very little information about. Alright, and so now that we got the queenly flesh, we can go back down to the altar of despair and see very, very little happen, really. So I think Lance said there was supposed to be like a cutscene associated with this action we're about to perform, but we don't get anything in the final version of the game. It just fades to black, and then it just time flows in reverse for this scrap of flesh, and that's pretty much exactly what it says in Japanese. So there's no hidden revelations that I can give to everyone today, unfortunately, at least in relation to this. So, oh damn it, I totally forgot to read the Queenly Flesh. I will just look at it on my spreadsheets and just read it from there. Apologize for that, got a bit distracted, got a bit ahead of myself. And the real unfortunate part about that is just not being able to look at the icon. It might resemble that of a liver, and in like earlier portions of the game, like livers might have like housed souls and things like that, or the soul, not like souls in like blood echoes, but just in like potential like Chinese philosophy, perhaps. So let me pull that up while we're loading the area. So the queenly flesh is what remains of Annalise, the blood queen of Canehurst. This pinkish lump of flesh remains warm as if cursed. All hail the undying queen of blood. And so in this context they call her the undying queen of blood instead of the undead queen of blood, which ties into what I said earlier, like the term for like undead is synonymous with undying or immortal. So that doesn't really bother me that it's switched in this case, like semantically, like it's pretty similar, I think. Maybe just like in terms of consistency, they could have been a bit more careful about that, but I'm not too upset about like this kind of thing since it's so innocuous for the story. And it does call Annalise the Blood Queen of Canehurst instead of like the Vile Blood Queen, which I think is important in terms of remembering like Queen Yarnum is called the Blood Queen of the Thumerian Chalice Dungeons, so or like the Thumerian Labyrinth. So it does show that I think that those two women are supposed to have the same sort of role. When we try to talk to Annalise again, she acts as though nothing happened. So this quest line is like very, very unfinished, even by like FromSoft standards.
Well, well. Thou wearest a second face. It matters not. Our flesh is undying. Speak thy mind.
The reason why she did say that is because I think I did accidentally hit her. So so that like idea of the second face is like, oh, like you're two-faced for like having hit me and then like try to like make up for it now.
We await thy return for the honor of Canehurst.
I'll just talk to her again, just to kind of show that nothing really happens.
Kin, bearer of our blood, I welcome thee. What is thy wish?
So now I'm going to offer her some blood drugs. I think we have 6, and which is fine because 5 is what we need, I believe, to gain the extra gesture. But really, nothing significant happens for helping her in leveling up the Covenant.
Thy gift pleases us. Let this reward be thine. Indulge thyself in our tainted blood.
So we get the deep respect gesture, which is what we perform to the Queen.
We await thy return.
We can't see it right now just because I've zoomed in, but it's not too significant, and I think like because the Queen does offer the hunter her blood and nothing happens for us, it should just show that perhaps like the blood isn't really that different from what we've already come into contact with, or like it's no different from what hunters specifically deal with on their nights of the hunt. I have talked about it before, but I will just show off like what happens when we use the blood drugs. So before I do that, I will go ahead and oh, is she gonna use a prayer? No. So the funny thing did happen to me yesterday when I was starting to go farm for those vermin. The doll performed her like 0.5% chance to say her little prayer to Flora of the Moon of the Dream. So of course it's just like that's gonna happen is immediately right when I go off stream, you know. So before we look at the blood drugs, or before I use the blood drugs, I will just re-examine that description to just compare and contrast with everything else that we've come into contact with so far. So we got another bot in the chat. Time to ban it. Alright, so the blood dregs. The vile bloods of Canehurst, bloodlusting hunters, see these frightful things in cold blood, which might tie into like how the League can see vermin within certain beasts and things like that. Like, it is questionable whether or not these exist because we must use the impurity or the Canehurst rune to see them. I tend to always refer to the Canehurst rune as impurity because that's what it's called in Japanese, Kegare. And the League, I just think of stagnation, which I know it's like their names have been reversed in English. So I do apologize if I do cause any confusion for that, like, kind of slip of the tongue. They often appear in the blood of echo fiends, that is to say, the blood of hunters. Queen Annalise partakes in these blood dregs offerings, so that she may one day bear the child of blood, the next vile blood heir. That line had been revised in Japanese, which just talks about holding a child of blood, not necessarily bearing one, as in like becoming pregnant. I think that the idea of like bearing a child and being pregnant was walked back a bit in development, and towards like the retail version of the game, those references just weren't updated back into English and like Korean, because those two languages say pretty much the same thing when that theme comes up. This does tie into the Blood Rapture rune, I believe, which we obtained from the Bloody Crow of Canehurst, and we gained from the boss fight with the Shadows of Yharnam. So, the rune resonates with the servants of the Queen, carrier of the Child of Blood, who yearn for their Queen's blood with little hope of requitement. For them, they find solace in blood rapture that serves as a surrogate for their desires. So, my general idea is that both, like the Shadows of Yharnam and Queen Annalise's servants, her royal guards, may have likely tried to hunt down hunters or those filled with blood echoes to obtain blood dregs and funnel them to their queen, and in so doing, because blood dregs are called like blood impurities or impurities of blood, their queens became more impure through the kind of refinement of they becoming more and more impure. It allowed them to bear those special children of blood, which we will find out with like the Yharnam Stone and potentially the Infant Murgo and the Nightmare of Mensis. And welcome back to the stream, Wonders. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for always stopping by and supporting us as we go. We did just kill Ebrietas, and we finished up all of the quests pertaining to Ariana, Annalise, Alfred, and Eileen. So now we're about to head into the DLC. So we've come at a good time for the transition into new content. Normally we will be able to access the DLC through this grave, but we haven't accessed it yet, so it's not available. I guess beast blood pellets are probably only the insight shop. Okay, yeah. Alright, so I won't worry about that then. I'll probably just save up some of the echoes and start buying items and showing those off as we go along. I did use the blood rock off stream because I wasn't thinking about like showing off the item. We will gain another one in the fishing hamlet, and once we beat the Mirko's wet nurse, we can also buy them. So, my fault for forgetting to do that. And I might have like forgotten to look at some other descriptions throughout the playthrough, but if you guys notice that I've forgotten something like that, please feel free to bring that to my attention. So coming back to the cathedral board, we can see the amygdala, which I've pointed out before. And since we have the Eye of the Blood Drunk Hunter, when we get grabbed by this, we will gain a new like cutscene and a new area to access. We gain a frenzy, and then it whisks us away.
Their children too. And their children forever true.
So, I personally believe that's the voice of Maria. I've heard that it's not, but I haven't seen that like actually confirmed. I'm pretty sure Lance doesn't believe it's Maria's voice. I don't know if it's like credited anywhere or anything like that to kind of reinforce that, but that's just kind of my head canon because I think like Maria is tied to this dream and our desire to like access it and figure out what's going on. So we've been whisked away into another area called the Hunter's Nightmare, which can get a bit confusing because in like the Japanese descriptions for some things, like the Hunter's Dream itself is also referred to as a nightmare. And so it looks like we've been transported right back into the Cathedral Ward and the tomb, or the Chapel of Erden Chapel. When we try to go back to like where we found Ariana and her like little slug baby, there's a closed off wall here. There is no extra library, so we are in a different location, and it will become apparent very quickly that not everything as it was in the waking world. So this door is still here, cannot be accessed. There's no door going off to the left like towards Old Yarnum. So Wonder says he reads their children too as metaphorical, as hunters could be regarded as children of other hunters who taught them how to do their job. What about you? I agree with you completely, and I think like Simon's dialogue will reinforce that idea that like the forefathers of hunters were like their mentors as hunters, like the hunters who preceded them, and the idea of like the children following is like more of a metaphor. Yeah, okay, so you pretty much say the same thing. When we step out into the Hunter's Nightmare, we get this kind of celestial figure going on in the sky. It's unclear if it's supposed to be the sun or the moon, and it is kind of clouded over with I don't even know what to call it. Like they're not like full. Well, they are clouds essentially. We will find that out later, but I believe the idea is what is covering this is supposed to be representative of a curse, and that curse is placed on the eyes of hunters amongst other things, and it should tie into like the literal image of the eye of the blood drunk hunter. So it might be a little bit difficult to see, but it looks like the pupil for this has been like dilated and collapsed, and it's kind of got like multiple circles. It doesn't match up like one to one, but I think that's like the basic idea that's supposed to be represented with what's like covering the celestial body in the sky over there. And the skybox doesn't really match what we can find in the Hunter's Dream or the Waking World, so we're in a very different part of maybe not reality, but just like the places we visited so far. This might be more analogous to what we can find in like the Nightmare Frontier. So we've got more statues as though this is part of the Cathedral Ward. We've got this very different, I don't know what to call it, like feature coming out of the ground. It resembles what we can find in the chamber for the Amygdala in the Nightmare Frontier. And like a lot of the ground has been shifted in such a way where like the statues and the lamps are misfigured and like kind of falling over, like a leaning Tower of Pisa. And also we have what looks to be more tomb mold growing out of the ground, which could suggest that the ground itself is made out of blood or is related to the blood, since that is what like tomb mold and things like that grow out of. So coming up here we have some beast patients coming into contact with a very hostile hunter-esque figure, an old hunter wielding a badass weapon, which is very like similar to the threaded cane, although it's more like a strength type variant. His eyes are glowing red, which could just show that he's overcome with emotions and rage and things like that. And he drops some blood vials. They don't, or like at least this one won't have like unique drops, although some of them will. Does the name of the narrator's voice actress happens to be featured in the credits and match with Maria's? I don't know. We'd probably have to like look that up just to get some more clarification on that. I think they sound very similar, but I'm fine with it not being Maria. I just think it makes more sense if it is, as opposed to just some random woman. Otherwise, I think it would have been like a cooler option to have had the voice actor been like the Hamlet priest, but because he says pretty much the same thing. Oh, I guess I do hit pretty hard still, so that's nice going into this area. Some more statues, some blood vials, and some more beast patients. And this area lines up with like the plaza where we find the giant church servants in the waking world. We will find like the beast patients kind of prowling about this area, and they will come into contact and fight like the kinds of old hunters that are in this area. So we can kind of kite them towards each other and just do some of our work for us, really. And I'll go ahead and say that I don't always remember like the names of what these guys are wielding, so I apologize for that. I'm sure somebody in chat will be able to correct me or point out what it is. I know it's a really cool weapon, and so we get like 2 of these old hunters popping out. So with their attire, it is got like more metal on it, and it's a little bit hard to show off without like showing off the set itself. But they'll have like straps all over their clothes, with the potential idea that like certain types of metal and things like that will help ward against beasts, and that the straps over their right leg will stop like the the beast hood from crawling inside them. So they do still scream out, like they have some possession of their faculties, arguably, because they're able to retain their speech. But it does show that the hunters in this area are filled with bloodlust, and they have gone blood drunk, and that's partially why this is the hunter's nightmare. And one moment. Alright. So, yeah. The hunter's nightmare is where, like, the blood drunk hunters do end up going. I think that is what's said in the Eye of the Blood Drunk Hunter. I don't fully remember off. The blood drunk hunter, its people is collapsed and blah 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 blah. A hunter who goes drunk with blood is said to be taken by the nightmare, destined to wander forever, engage in an endless hunt. It is a fate that no hunter can escape. So yeah, it is already confirmed to us that the blood drunk hunters will end up in this hunter's nightmare. It says no hunter can escape them, and that is a little bit curious because we don't see the figures of like Father Gascoigne or potentially Eileen, Alfred, etc. winding up in here as we progress. So one of the cooler things of this area is there are some environmental traps. This is a kind of gun on a turret that will activate if you step on its pressure plate. I'm trying to go for this body, which is some low quality items to just kind of bait the player into a trap. This kind of statue is still showing up in this area. Damn dogs. Damn monocular. So, I am curious as to why dogs also show up in this nightmare, because, I mean, they're certainly not people. It's not something you'd expect to find in the hunter's nightmare. Sure, they might be hunting dogs, and they do look a little bit different. They look closer to Doberman, but they don't really seem like fully transformed types of dogs. So I wish that was explained for us a bit better as well. We'll find some more old hunters along the way. Some of them are not as strong as the others. Like that guy did not have red eyes, so that's why I don't believe he was quite as strong as the two we fought over there and the one over by the bridge, or the arc that kind of serves as a bridge at this point. And not only are there the dogs in this area, there will be crows. And so these hunters aren't too terrible to deal with. A lot of them don't wield guns to kind of parry and visceral the player. So you can kind of R1 spam them with impunity. And I will get that item in a moment as well. You say perhaps the nightmare is where blood drunk beings end up, regardless of whether they're human or not. Don't know if the dogs being covered in blood is telling. Yeah, I think that's a good possibility. And not only do the dogs show up in this area, we will find crows as well. So it could just be whatever imbibes enough of the blood can be brought here. But they're not exactly something you'd expect to be here on a first guess. So these are the crows that I was talking about, and just like in the real cathedral ward, this gate is closed and we can open it to get access to a kind of a small shortcut. We will continue to find more of that old hunter set as we progress through the area. So I'm not terribly worried about reading it quite yet. But I also don't want to forget about it like I have been. And I'll look at them right now. So we still get that lion sigil, so it's interesting. So yeah, a lot of the assets of the cathedral ward are obviously reused here. Things are shaped differently to make things seem a bit more unique and stand out. I do like how it was all pieced together, even if it is kind of just essentially recycled content. It's not necessarily the first time they've done that in a Soulsborne game, what's it called? In the Dark Souls 1 DLC, the Royal Gardens are essentially the Dark Root Gardens, all over again. So it's not terribly surprising that the first part of the DLC is just the Cathedral Ward all over again, and all over again, as we'll find out. So the old hunter set. So it looks like there are actually quite a bit of differences between them. So the old hunter cap is an old hunter cap with a wide brim that hides their sharp gaze. In the old days when hunters were 10 a penny, this was part of their standard garb. So this could mean like it came from the Garriman's workshop, like the normal workshop, since it's kind of normal hunting gear. It's standard attire. 10 a penny just means like they were a dime a dozen, like pretty numerous in like the way that they operated, and yeah. So the old hunter gloves say that they're gauntlets made of brass to protect their weapons bearing or weapon bearing hands. Sorry. At the time, some hunters believed that certain metals would ward off beast blood. On a night of the hunt, it is no wonder that some resort to superstition. So this does tie into what I was talking about with like hunters believing that metals will help ward off beasts, and most importantly, like certain kinds of beast blood. And there isn't a whole lot of grounds for their beliefs, so that's why they call it like superstition. Like it doesn't really help ward against beasts, even though like that is something that's kind of repeated in Canehurst with their it's like silver masks which cover their faces as an attempt to defend against blood of ill intent, as they say. The old hunter trousers are old hunter trousers that protected countless hunters from the beasts in an older age. A widespread belief of the period was that beast blood crept up the right leg, and this led to the double-wrapped belt. Now, the idea that beast blood crept up the right leg might tie into the animation that we use for using blood vials. I'm going to use the emergency bullets. We like kind of stab our left leg for that, and to heal our HP, we take the blood vial and stab our right leg. Funnily enough, like that animation is fleshed out, and so the hunter does use a syringe to inject themselves with that blood. So if hunters or whoever it was did inject blood by using like the blood vials, it could just like tie into like that animation right there. So like continually stabbing yourself in the leg to restore HP. Oh no, oh no, oh no, no. Alright, okay, that came down a lot slower than I was remembering. So yeah, we get another Indiana Jones moment, where some Yarnamites, well, I don't know if you can really call them Yarnamites anymore, up there, they wield torches and they will knock this flaming, like, wood boulder looking like thing down the path to I lost that here. Okay, I got it. So, this big badass over here is called, I don't want to say he's a Nightmare Executioner, because, like, that is something that the fans call it. He might be called that in the art book, I don't quite remember. In Japanese, the term is bell holder, and so their gigantic axes that they're wielding are essentially just giant bells, and you'll hear that kind of chiming sound as they swing them around. I will show off some more of their attacks a bit later. Right now I'm just trying to like go and collect some of the items and clear things that would be obstacles in the way of that. And from their bells, like they kind of use that the power of those bells like to like buff themselves with arcane attacks. Their faces are like covered with tendrils, so they do seem to be like somewhat related to like the brain suckers or potentially things that we'll discover in the research hall. There aren't a whole lot of connections between the bell holders and what we find in like the base version of the game. Obviously, they do seem to be like the gigantic church servants, but just transmogrified by whatever horrific experiments were conducted onto them, and they seem to be like a little bit more distant from, say, like blue elixirs and more closer to experimentation with phantasms directly. Velstadt ripoffs. Shake your head. Okay. So we got the old hunter garb. I think that one might be similar to everything else. It's closer to the beginning. Oh no, I guess it is a little bit different. One day the hunters disappeared, and Yarnamites began to whisper of the hunter's sin. Drunk with blood, chasing after beasts, they would pass on to the nightmare, every last one of them. So yeah, this just does kind of set up that perhaps all of the old hunters did disappear one day mysteriously, or maybe it was something that happened over time. Maybe the continued imbibing of the blood caused them to disappear, or they may have been whisked away from the streets by the amygdalae that are like covering Cathedral Ward and Yahar Ghul. It's very unclear how, when, and why they were all transported into the Hunter's Nightmare. Shake your head, your head. Executioner is also a fitting name, translation to be accurate. Executioner, they are not called executioners. The one reason that I do want to be very clear about that is just because how often the term executioner already comes up, even in like the Japanese version of the game. It's really easy to confuse that kind of idea of executioner with what we find in the executioner gloves. The executioner is affiliated with Alfred in the Healing Church, and so like calling those guys nightmare executioners makes it sound like they're part of that faction when they're probably not. They're just like creepy monsters that hold bells for axes. I don't know. So that is just kind of like why I do harp or continue to like talk about that kind of thing. So yep, there's another blood drunk hunter up there. This one hits extremely hard. He's extremely enraged. We will gain a vermin from killing him, and he's still got those glowing red eyes, and like that visceral did barely a little bit more than half of his HP. So from his corpse we gained some blood vials and the vermin, which I've been mentioning. The tampering blood gem was already lying on the ground, I think. And pretty sure there's the item over here, like one of the weapons. Am I missing? Okay, yeah. Here it is. So this is the beast cutter, like that strength type version of the threaded cane I talked about. It's a trick weapon wielded by the old hunters. This thick iron cleaver slices through the toughest of beast hides, and when transformed, the blade splits into sections, allowing one to lash it in the fashion of a heavy whip. This crude weapon relies on brute force and is regrettably inelegant, suggesting that the hunts of the earliest hunters made for horrific affairs, painted in sanguine blacks and reds. And of course, like sanguine is synonymous with blood, and things like that. Looking at chat, we have the enemy is essentially named Nightmare Butcher in the art book. Maybe in English, but like the Japanese, it's like Kanemochi, which is like bell holder, or like holding bell, essentially. Aren't these ones wearing the executioner robe, or is that the tomb prospector garb? Yeah, it's a bit ambiguous. I think it's probably closer related to like the tomb prospector garb, or potentially like the white church set, because like the giant church servants also seem to be having like something closer to the white church set. Although with their really big shawls, it's kind of like left out in the open. But yes, Butcher spares the confusion. Yeah, I agree with that. Welcome back, Souls at Zero. We have finally gone to the DLC, completed pretty much all of the base game content up to Murgo's Wet Nurse. Oh, and then the Japanese for that. I think the Beast Cutter. I don't remember if there's anything different about that. Yeah, it's pretty similar. Okay, not gonna worry about that. I suppose I haven't talked about it yet, but just in Japanese, trick weapon is called like a shikakebuki, and like more literally, that's like mechanical or like triggered weapon. So I think like them calling it a trick weapon is a very, very like nice localization. Like it really gets across the idea that there's something more to the weapon than what you'll have at like a glance. even if it's not like a magic trick or anything like that, it's, I don't know. I really like that they came up with that term. It's something that I borrowed in my translations, partially to like just keep it consistent, but I think it would sound very like awkward to just say like it's an activated weapon or like a triggered weapon or something like that. Mechanical weapon might be like the next closest literal translation I can make for it, but I think trick weapon works perfectly for it. So coming into the Nightmare, or one of the Nightmare Grand Cathedrals, we have a gigantic flaming beast, cleric beast looking like thing, underneath the same kind of altar where we could find Lawrence's skull in the waking world. Of course, this is reminiscent of Michelangelo's Pieta, which is like the figure of the Virgin Mary cradling the dead body of Jesus Christ after he's died. And so it does show like this should be like a messianic figure for the Healing Church, even if this is like a nightmare representation of what's going on. Like that kind of imagery will get repeated over and over. I think I have quick access to like an image of that, so I could probably just share it with chat real quick. Let me quickly scroll up. Okay, yeah. I'll try to remember to include this in the YouTube description, but for anyone in chat who wants to like look at the kind of statue that I'm talking about, there it is right there. I'm playing on the PS4, so I don't have like access to overlays or anything like that. A pretty low tech streamer as they go. So coming up to the hand of this like kind of flaming cleric beast, we can receive an eye pendant. You'd think at first like this would lead into a boss fight, like you can attack it, nothing will happen, and that will become a bit more relevant later on. Like why the hell else would there still be like this just kind of gigantic arena? Why is all this like fire coming out of the ground? It's just a very ominous area to first foray into the DLC for it to not really lead into anything. So now that we have gotten that eye pendant from that flaming beast's hand, let's examine it. So the eye pendant is an eye pendant which unlocks the surgery altar. We don't know what that is quite yet. There are two cathedrals in the Hunter's Dream. One lies past the River of Blood, and another contains the private research hall of the Healing Church. Only chosen members of the Healing Church or their lamentable patients can enter the research hall using this eye. Grant eyes to the surgery altar skull. So we will find out what this does later on if we manage to kill like Ludwig in a pretty timely manner. Hopefully that happens. Like I am somewhat experienced with the fight, having died to him so many times, but I do think that the design on this eye pendant is reminiscent of like the little activatable pressure plates that we can find in the Nightmare of Mensis. I pointed that out. Like it's kind of like got that golden or like brass circular outer piece that kind of surrounds that eye. And so if it were glowing green, I think it would essentially be like a lock into the two pieces. So the final line in Japanese does differ. Rather than saying like it is a fate that no hunter can escape, it says tada karyudo de atta ga yueni. So it's like but it's only because they were like mere hunters that they continue to hunt for beasts, I suppose. So it does lead into the idea that there is going to be something more to it, or like the only reason why that they're wandering, like they're left wandering in the nightmare, is because they were just mere or simple hunters. So if you're not a mere or like a simple hunter, that might mean like you can wander the nightmare with more purpose. I don't know. It's one of those things that's just kind of really vague by From on purpose. So coming into the next area, we can still look out and find the figure of like another grand cathedral and an astral clock tower. That is the second grand cathedral that they're talking about. We will find another kind of repetition of a cathedral ward-esque area, and that's where we need to go, and it'll be like across this river of blood over here. So coming into this next area, we've also got like a Gatling gun being manned by some Yarnamites. They do resemble like the normal huntsman minion, stuff like that. We've got the kind of graves that we've seen all about like the Nightmare Frontier, which I think does like reinforce the idea that maybe this was an area that got appropriated by the hunters in the Hunter's Nightmare, and it became like transformed because of them, as like they kept getting brought into the nightmare. Over here we have almost like the petrified skeletal remains of an amygdala, like halfway buried into the ground. Perhaps it was killed by the blood-drunk hunters in this nightmare. I think it's a really, really cool environmental piece, but we don't really get an explanation as to how or why it came to be put in this location and what the significance behind it being here is. When we go down to like the chasms underneath us, we will be able to gain like an amygdalan arm weapon. So I stepped on a pressure plate right here, which did activate that kind of a hidden like machine gun type turret thing over there. So you can kind of run at a certain interval to get past these Yarnamites and their guns. This one's pointing backwards, so if you're focused on this Yarnamite, it's really easy to miss. And then it's really easy to break them as well. So more of a bit of an environmental hazard, something to just kind of figure out what's going on. So, and of course, that was the other Grand Cathedral, which we just came from, right over there. So normally, like in the Waking World, we'd be going down towards like Yarhar Ghul, like that well where we found the Tenacious Hunter and the Rifle Spear Hunter. So Wenders says, do you think it could be from the Nightmare Frontier if you buy the idea of the nightmare areas being laid on top of each other? I'm thinking this amygdala could have drowned and ended up here. I don't know if it drowned, but I do think that the general idea that we're supposed to get is maybe there is a kind of connection between the Nightmare Frontier and the Hunter's Dream. Especially when we look at like the masts coming out of the Nightmare Frontier, the base of it in like the base version of the game. For me personally, I think since like these graves get repeated all over the place, the like little landform features resembling what we find with the amygdala's lair, my interpretation would be that the nightmares are shaped by the people or the things that inhabit them, and since hunters have come to inhabit this nightmare, even if it was like originally like the Nightmare Frontier, their wills or their memories or whatever probably shaped it into resembling like the Cathedral Ward, and the same might apply to the Hunter's Dream. And the reason why it looks the way that it looks is because of Gehrman and potentially his subconscious altering it to be the shape of the Hunter's Dream, or like the abandoned workshop, really. So those dudes, the Yarnamites, are throwing delayed Molotov cocktails. Whew, thought that was gonna get me. And those are an item we haven't seen yet. We will pick some up very shortly. And they are a product of the Otto workshop. Not sure how they're supposed to be pronounced in English, but coming into this area, this is a bit closer in theme to Central Yharnam, and more specifically the Dark House that we find in that Central Yharnam as well, the one by Gilbert. I know there's a guy over here. Maybe he just comes up the steps. Okay. So this is where we would find like the two Yarnamites just kind of talking. And that gives us the delayed Molotov. I think there's an item out there, although I'm not sure if I have to drop down for it. Yeah. Right. I'll come back for that in a second just because I want to try to show this off. It's probably not going to work out just because it's so dark and stuff like that. I do like the idea though that if like the blood drunk people end up in the nightmare, that these people could literally have been the exact same people that we fought in Central Yarnum over by the Great Bridge. And so this NPC right here is of course like another wheelchair huntsman. However, he looks exactly like the Blood Minister in the beginning of the game, like he has the same kind of hat. It might be, I might not be able to show that off because when you get closer to him, like he'll laugh and like have like a bomb cause an explosion of like all these oil urns around him. I don't know if I can like break them up and like stop that from happening. I don't think I can. Okay, this might work out. So might be hard to see his face, but like he's got, maybe he doesn't have the exact same jacket on, but like that hat is the same as like the Blood Minister. And oh no. Alright, so maybe I can get it to work. Probably gonna like get exploded from trying to do this. I think that's it. I'm not sure if this will work, but if you like step forward. He's got like a delayed Molotov on him, and it will set off everything. So yeah, okay, that wouldn't work. He blows himself up. I was just hoping like the flasks or what really did it. So from the corpse right next to it, we get the boom hammer. There is no note leading into Old Yarnum over here. So let's look at the items we got. We got some delayed Molotovs and the boom hammer. I passed it probably. So they do have quite a different description compared to just the normal Molotov cocktail. And the delayed Molotovs are special hunter tools crafted by the old Otto workshop. These Molotovs wedge into the ground when thrown and explode on a timed delay. A shame that such a complex gadget must be sacrificed with each use of this inefficient hunter tool. Nevertheless, delayed Molotovs are cherished by the minority of hunters who prefer the trixier kill. This creation is one of the earliest known roots of the powder kegs. So this does set up that the powder kegs are related to the Otto workshop. The Otto workshop predates the powder kegs, and I think just the general idea of them beginning to use more flashy, explosive designs, it kind of ties into the idea that the powder kegs became infatuated with like the kind of flashier kills and techniques and things like that. The Japanese does make that final line a bit more speculation in that it may be connected to the later sprouting of the powder kegs, so just one thing to keep in mind, although I think it is pretty implicit that there is that kind of relation just with how it works out. And then the boom hammer. It is a trick weapon used by the old hunters and crafted by the workshop heretics, the powder kegs. A giant hammer equipped with a miniature furnace. When ignited and fired, it emits a volley of flame that explodes furiously upon impact. Crush the beasts, then burn them. The brute simplicity of the boom hammer was favored by the hunters with an acute distaste for beasts. So, if the Odo workshop was involved with like creating the delayed Molotovs and like fire and things like that, the powder kegs took that idea up to 11 and created things like the boom hammer and the stake driver, which really emphasize the explosive force of such weapons to like rid themselves of beasts, and using fire to cleanse beasts on their way. So yeah, it's pretty close to the Japanese, just like some small flavor differences. And then, like I was saying just a moment ago, like if these hunters are related to the ones that we find in like Central Yarnum or things like that, I can't necessarily say that this is true, but I like to believe that perhaps this little guy up here will be Gilbert, although I think that might become a bit of a moot point, because if you don't like kill Gilbert or like talk to him or whatever, like this guy will still be here in the Hunter's Nightmare. So we've got another Beast Claw Hunter, although this dude is much more transformed. He essentially has like the Beast Embrace version of whatever it is, like compared to like Gilbert just having the Beast rune. So this guy is very agile. He rolls quite a lot, as you can see. And then he just like kind of did like a beast roar. So from that guy we get the firing hammer badge, which does indicate that it came from the Oto workshop. It's a badge, so. And I've pointed this out before, but I think the design of this firing hammer badge does get repeated. I think on the Evelyn, maybe not that one. On the rifle spear in the concept artwork book, and the Reiter Palash. So it might connect the idea of Oto as being a heretical brand of the workshop to Canehurst, and the way that like the rifle spear was allegedly descended from Canehurst. Or inspired by Canehurst design could like lead to the idea of a heretical workshop being more associated with Canehurst and things like that. So the Firing Hammer badge is a badge crafted by the Oto workshop, precursor to the workshop of the heretical powder kegs. The powder kegs were driven by singular ideas and crafted strange weapons of great intricacy. It is clear that the philosophy of the powder kegs was already established at this time. So this does tie into exactly what I was talking about with like the Molotov cocktails, more intricate, flashy, explosive designs, just kind of first being brought into the forefront by the Oto workshop, and then just kind of expanded upon by the powder kegs later. And so this is also important to note that the Oto workshop predated the powder kegs, and so that would mean that like the events of Old Yarnum must have happened somewhat later in terms of like how long the hunters have existed. Like I've seen people bring up that they believe that the events of Old Yarnum must have happened like probably amongst the first events in the game. I don't think that's true, just because you must have had Gehrman's workshop, Canehurst people existing, the Oto workshop, all of those existing before the powder kegs, and potentially like the Healing Church workshop must have existed for the Healing Church to have abandoned Old Yarnum. So I don't believe that Old Yarnum happened early in the story. It must have happened fairly late in the timeline of everything. So do you think this guy could be Jura's third old buddy? Potentially, but he is affiliated with like the Otos and is more of a beast. But just for my headcanon, I like to think that he's Gilbert. Actually, like where Gilbert's house would be in Central Yarnum. This is where that lantern would be, and like Yosefka's clinic would be down a ladder over here. But we don't really get that, so in my head, this is Nightmare Hunter, or Hunter's Nightmare Gilbert, and we free him again. Just think of it as like a mercy killing. Like we freed him from his beasthood. Alright, so now that I dealt with like the little dude over here, I'm gonna go drop down. Could have done it before, but I just kind of... So we get the old hunter top hat. Which is kind of like a part of a different set, but it's more decorative in nature. The old hunter cap, or old hunter top hat warped by bloodstains. In the old days, when hunters were 10 a penny, this was part of their standard garb. So the top hat is part of a little bit of a more ornate set, like more decorative set, but not too different from the other old hunter set. So down in the River of Blood, we find the corpses of many like Yarnamites or whatever. And I'm not going to deal with what's going on so much here yet. I'm just going to go ahead and unlock the shortcut, because the blood lickers are annoying, and I don't really feel like running through the rest of the Hunter's Nightmare to get there. And coming into this area, we will find a friendly NPC. And so this door opens up back to the Hunter Nightmare equivalent of the Erden Chapel. So this is Simon, and he is like a kind of seeker of truth, and he kind of looks like a bum, and he's wearing the Herald garb, which kind of reinforces that perspective, although the Herald garb will, it's more like a kind of like a secret church hunter that kind of operates from the shadows. So his role is a little bit shrouded in mystery as well.
You're a hunter with your sanity, aren't you? Must have taken a wrong turn, then, eh? Well, we're more alike than you think. This is the hunter's nightmare, where hunters end up when drunk with blood. You've seen them before. Aimless, wandering hunters slavering like beasts. This is what the poor fools have to look forward to. So, don't be brash. Turn back before it's too late. Unless you've something of an interest in nightmares.
I don't remember if you can like say no and then yes to him later. So I'm just gonna be like a bit more cautious. If you tell him that you have no interest, he'll say yes, as it should be. Hunt your beasts and think no more on the secrets of the night. That is the very best a hunter can do. Just don't let the blood intoxicate you. So that's pretty straightforward. And he says, "What now? Take my word and turn back before it's too late. Unless I suppose you've taken an interest in nightmares." Oh, so I suppose you can just kind of undo that. So whatever. I'll just go with nightmares are fascinating.
Oh yes, I see. You sense a secret within the nightmare and cannot bear to leave it be. As if the spirit of Bergenworth lives on within you. Such inquisitive hunters will relish the nightmare. But beware. Secrets are secrets for a reason, and some do not wish to see them uncovered. Especially when the secrets are particularly unseemly.
So his dialogue is very close to the Japanese up until like maybe like the final two lines, and I mean honestly like the intent behind them is pretty similar. The Japanese is just a bit clearer, and I think like kind of like getting to that point of what's going on between it. So instead of like saying but beware, secrets are secrets for a reason, he'll say there's always something hiding with or like hidden within secrets, and that idea of like I don't know how to phrase this. Like that something that he's saying is more used in the context of like something that's alive, which is extremely hard to like kind of get across. So the idea is like there's something that is being hidden to the hunters, and the hunter's dream is a living thing. And of course we know that will tie up into like the Orphan of Kos and things like that, but it's probably not something that's very easy to like get across just in terms of like localization. Welcome to the stream, Kid Stealth. We're analyzing the lore of Bloodborne and talking to Simon in the DLC. We've already completed most of the base game content at this point. Fear the Old Blood indeed. And in this stream, we fear the old lore instead. So, and the final part of Simon's dialogue is, especially when the secrets are particularly unseemly. In Japanese, it's more like, if they're embarrassing, all the more reason like to be cautious. And like, he kind of speaks and like clips that off, so it's more like implied dialogue. So the secret that is being hidden in the dream is a bit of an embarrassment to the Healing Church, and that's part of the reason why they're trying to keep it secret. So that might come across in English, but it might also just be like a little bit too obscure to like really understand the exact motivations for that, I think. So I just kind of like to bring that kind of thing up in conjunction with this text.
Beware. Secrets are secrets for a reason, and some do not wish to be discovered, especially when the secrets are particularly unseemly.
And so that's all he'll say for this area. The important thing is we just did unlock that shortcut, and so if I die like going forward, it won't be that big a deal. I can just quickly run back to where we were. So this is the River of Blood, and it is covered with a bunch of like dead skeletons, as opposed to, I don't know, live skeletons, I suppose, but not too crazy for this game, all things considered. My parry is a little bit slow. It's okay. And so we still like find some of the corpses of horses in the dream, even some more carriages. So this is a bit closer to like Central Yarnum in the way that it's laid out than you might initially expect. So even if this is a dream, like, it is pretty close in its representation of their version of reality, minus like all the damn blood liquors and rivers of blood leading through it. So you guys have seen me die enough to the blood liquors where I'm not really going to go around killing every one of them. Just going to run past them, hopefully, and deal with like the cave beyond everything. I need to go the other way. Shit. And of course, their blood projectiles will deal a little bit of slow poison. And coming into this cave, we will find like another blood-drunk hunter, and this one will be wielding a Gatling gun, and I don't remember what weapon. He can be annoying to deal with, like enclosed in this small area. So I might die just because he can kind of stun you pretty easily. And of course, as an NPC, he'll have unlimited bullets as well, because why wouldn't he? So I think like a mail truck or something's outside because my dog's like whining, so I apologize if she goes crazy in a second and you guys hear it. So yeah, I just kind of got stun locked a little bit from his damn weapon. Oh. My timing on him is so bad. I don't know what weapon he's wielding, but it's pretty fast. So is that the rifle spear? Saw spear. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty uncommon, so I definitely don't know like the timings of that. Okay, we got him. Yeah, and also just because like being in this like little cave, it's a lot harder to read him. Even though I've got my hand lantern on, it doesn't do a whole lot. The cave itself is covered in blood. Well, it's still filled with all these skeletons. So that's probably why it's part of the River of Blood, and just to reinforce that like tomb mold does grow from blood, like we see them growing on all these corpses as well. And coming down here, we will find another old battle buddy. We will get a kind of a mini boss version of a blood-starved beast with a bunch of like beast patients around it. For some reason, like, it kind of bleeds like a silvery color here. It might just be because, like, we're underground and don't have, like, a ton of light. The little beast blood dudes, or beast patient guys down here have red eyes. So they're probably, like, pretty angry or, like, filled with emotions. Probably high with poison damage. Don't fully remember. Still trying to do the old trick of in and to the left on the blood-starved beasts. So yeah, the fact that it bleeds silver down here is very interesting and something I hadn't noticed before. I'm just gonna maybe chalk it down to lighting. I know like the regular blood-starved beast bleeds a more like greenish color, probably because it's filled with poison. But oh well, just gonna have to chalk it down as like one of those weird mechanical things. It's probably not really related to lore or gameplay. And even just like focusing so much on the color of blood might not be too important to begin with either. So now that we've already come down here, I think you might be able to see... No. The amygdala arm. So we are like kind of under the amygdala that I had pointed out from before, that was like kind of buried in the ground. And now that we're like underneath that area, we can gain a amygdalan arm weapon, which is really cool. Like conceptually, I personally don't like the weapon so much, like mechanically, but it's really cool that they included it in the game nonetheless. So it's the arm of a small amygdala great one. Strictly speaking, the amygdalan arm is no trick weapon of any sort, but certain madmen wield them like clubs. Starts as a large, tough, blunt weapon formed of bone, but when extended, the hand quivers as if it were still alive. And I don't think I have the stats to show it off. Yeah, I need some more strength. But you can kind of wield it like a scythe, and it'll like will wriggle and writhe. And you could use it like an extending claw almost, or just kind of like as a really heavy hammer. And for some reason, like a lot of people understood the first line about it coming from a small amygdala great one as being like evidence for there being what are called like lesser amygdalas or great ones or greater ones or whatever. But generally it just means like it's literally a physically smaller one. It's not like lesser in status of being a great one. So Wender says, how fit for enemies from Old Yharnam to guard the amygdala arm? Is it stretching if I see Lauren vibes? I'm not sure. I think like Lauren was probably related to the Nightmare Frontier in general, because like that amygdala does drop the Lauren Chalice. The Silver Beasts, we find them in Lauren as well. It's related to electricity, all that kind of good stuff. I don't think there are any more items. Is there a drop off over there? Maybe we already got it. Nah, screw it. It's gonna bother me if I don't check and remember for sure. So yeah, I don't know if this area is supposed to still be like connected to Lorien, but I think the Nightmare Frontier definitely was. And since this place does resemble the Nightmare Frontier, okay, so there's no drop over there. Okay. And of course, like now that we're going through this area, like there's really still not a whole lot connecting it to whatever this place may have been beforehand. This item is really minor, and I'm probably going to die for picking it up, but deal with it. Oh, the constable trousers. Okay, so it wasn't so minor. that one was. Okay. So, I'll just read the Constable Trousers while the enemies get reset. This item is tied into Walter and his stuff. It's the bad part of only getting like one item in the set. It's a little bit easy to overlook. Okay, there we go. Constable Trousers. Once upon a time, a troop of foreign constables chased a beast all the way to Yarnum, and this is what they wore. The constables became victims of the beast except for one survivor, who in turn devoured the creature whole, all by himself. This fable is a favorite among Yarnumites, who are partial to any stories of pompous, intolerant foreigners who suffer for their ignorance. It makes the blood taste that much sweeter. So this does have a very big difference in Japanese. Like that last paragraph has been changed quite a bit. The way that it's written in Japanese is a little bit hard to understand, and it bothered me for a while, like how different the two descriptions were. So I did look at it in Korean, and the Korean version of this item did match up pretty much exactly with what the English said. So I think the main takeaway from that information is at one point in development, what is said in English is what was written in Japanese. The Japanese item got updated, and then that text wasn't transferred to Korean and English, and probably not Chinese either, but unfortunately I don't know enough Chinese to kind of back that up. And by enough Chinese, I mean I don't really know any at all, so don't want to mislead anybody there. So the Japanese for that is: this is a kind of tale that the people of Yarnum are fond of. Repressive, narrow-minded foreigners don't understand Yarnum, so they expose themselves to corpse blood in secret. How satisfying can it be? And so like that little last part is a bit of an idiomatic expression, so like rather than the blood tasting sweeter, it's more like how like it'll like settle the stomach is essentially what it's trying to say. So just the basic idea is like the people of Yarnum will openly imbibe the blood, but like the people from outside Yarnum will judge Yarnumites for drinking blood, but those outsiders themselves will try to drink that blood that the Yarnumites are drinking in secret and like hide it from everybody else. So the idea that like foreigners are pompous and they sneer at Yarnumites for doing the exact same thing that the people of Yarnum do. So that reinforces like that the Yarnumites are justified in what they do, and they're also better than foreigners because they have like, I don't know, the bravery or like the ability to admit what they do in public, and they shouldn't be ashamed of it, whereas like everybody else is, and they just emulate what the people of Yarnum are doing anyway. So that's a really, really big difference. And just tying that back into like the story of Walter, like Walter is wearing the constable trousers, so this sets him up as potentially part of that squad which chased the beast into Yarnum. We will find out like once we give Walter more vermin and he gives us his helmet, we can later on summon him as the Beast Eater Walter. So that should very explicitly signify that he is the one who ate that beast. And that's also like ties into the Impurity rune, or like their Stagnation rune, which talks about like him eating the beast is what allowed him to see the vermin. Okay, no differences in the chat. So yeah, that's the constable set that I wanted to show off. Let me know what you guys think about just like that kind of contextual difference. Like that really fascinates me just because I think like those give off like very, very different impressions of like what the Yarnumites think of outsiders and stuff like that. So coming through the River of Blood, I think we get some more of these skull-like, rock-like formations, which could suggest like the Hunter's Nightmare is made out of like people as well. Otherwise, there's no like really good explanation as to like why those kind of figures show up. And then we gain more like residential type or buildings in this section of the map, even though we can't access them. I don't remember if there's anything like significant about like what was on the buildings themselves. I thought it was pretty nondescript or not super relevant, but I will examine them as we go, just to continue to be thorough with their playthroughs. Over there. And so perhaps like one of the differences between like the Yarnamite type hunters and these hunters over here are the fact that like if these are old hunters, they probably dreamt. And that may be why they're so much stronger. Like they have their bodies fortified with like blood echoes and things like that. And that would also explain like why they are more visibly blood drunk and like calling out for blood, things like that. So we get some more crows all around the kind of river of corpses in this river of blood. And speaking of these corpses, we do have like some of them begin to like rise up out of the ground, which might tie into why so many of the coffins were chained up in Yharnam. Of course, this is the nightmare, so it might not be what really happens in the waking world, but we can't necessarily discredit that it happens in the waking world either. And just to show like where we are in this kind of hunter's nightmare, this would be where the aqueducts are, or the canals in central Yharnam. We've got the messengers with their little lanterns showing up, and like the little rafters going across areas. That is where we get the whirligig saw, the pizza cutter, although it takes a little bit of a finagling to get to the shortcut area for it. So if we go down this way, we see a little item in the distance, which is a hint to go down here. There is going to be another old hunter wielding like the beast hunting safe or scythe. I don't really know how it's pronounced. I actually died that guy probably the most of any of the NPC hunters, so I'm gonna go ahead and unlock like this little shortcut to the lantern first before trying to deal with all that. So we get some more of the bell holders, although that one's holding a damn cannon. And then this area right here is like kind of where we would go to Old Yharnam in the waking world. This would be like that church, although it's completely turned around. And so we would go down here and fight the Scourge Beast, and we would activate it by pulling the lever, and Alfred would have been over to the right. So we are, like, the geography of this area does not mesh up very well. That little plaza over there is more reminiscent of what we can find in the Cathedral Ward. So we get that big old statue, and then the graves over here again. And we can also visceral these guys if you're quiet. Oh. And play better. Sometimes it's a little bit tough to judge that distance. Oh, I'm out of bullets. Okay, I was like, why am I not? We'll do a dodge over there. Okay. So that's one of its grab attacks. I will probably show one of those off, and okay, so that gives us some bullets. So I'm gonna sneak up and just examine this guy. So we can kind of hear the little chiming of the bell from its axe head. Or it might be coming from it itself. think that's actually the first time I like turned up my sound to just hear what they kind of sound like. And it is interesting, like they seem to be filled with like whispering voices and things like that. So we get some more blood vials, which are definitely needed at this point. And I do want to point out, like, for something that's a bit out of place compared to like a lot of the other parts of Bloodborne, like the leaves in this area are green, as though they are being sustained and they're still alive. The tomb mold here are like covered with red, so there is probably a good connection with like the blood sustaining life, and I think that's just kind of reinforced with this kind of imagery. And I should also show off like that kind of thing repeating in Tomb of Erden sometimes. So from this area we gain the Butcher Mask, which could relate to the Confederates and like Yamamura, or not Yamamura, but the Madras twins, because they wear like the Butcher set as well. And for the Ludwig fight, we could summon the younger Madras twin. I don't remember if we could summon him if we kill his brother. Probably not. We could also summon Walter to help us with Ludwig as well. And Souls never paid attention to that sound. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't think I ever really like noticed that kind of whispering that went along with it either. I also tend to confuse the Butcher set with the Graveyard set, just because they're probably like close together, and like this just looks like a little bit darker, but very similar. That's how it works out. So the main set is pretty much the same, it's just the mask which differs. The Mask of the Madras twins, denizens of the Forbidden Woods, likely belonging to the elder of the two. The twins grew up in silent kinship with a poisonous snake. Eventually, they learned human ways and became hunters. When they discovered vermin, even in their beloved snake, the younger brother is said to have murdered the older. So it's unclear like whether or not the older brother fed the vermin to the younger snake, and that might have been why the younger one killed him. But there is a pretty interesting difference in the Japanese that I'll talk about in just a moment. So the Butcher garb is garb of the Madras twins, denizens blah 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 blah. Both of the twins became hunters and brought back and dissected their beast prey in order to support the villagers in their forbidden research. So this does give us some more context as to what was going on in the Forbidden Woods. They would take like the remains of their victims and like give them to the like church hunters there, when they would conduct research based off of what they brought back. So it is taboo research, it's forbidden research that the healing church was conducting in that area. With the Butcher set itself, maybe it might be on the just the whistle, which we'll get a little bit later. Let me double check. Okay, yeah, so it looks like what I did want to talk about was part of the whistle description and not so much the Butcher set. The Japanese is pretty close. It just says like instead of like silent kinship with the snake, it's more like the twins weren't concerned with like speech or like learning how to speak, and so they also grew up alongside the snake, and so they might not have ever like really spoken to people. I guess is the takeaway that we're supposed to get from that item. Wender says you're pretty sure you can't summon him if you kill him. Perhaps he's angry and jealous if you do. Yeah, I'm not sure if that one right there is... well, I know that one should be the younger brother just based off the set description. I'm a little bit distracted getting turned around. But I'm not sure if the one... Oh, okay. If the one that will fight us like outside of Walter's location, if that one is the younger or the older brother. And I think before dealing with Ludwig, I will go back and talk to Walter, just because like we get the... What am I doing? We get the constable set and learn a bit more about like the Madras twins, and so I think it's a really good time to just kind of look at that. might get ambushed right here. So one of the cool parts about this spot is like, besides like a terrible cliff shadow over there, you can see the shadow of that. Pretty sure it was somewhere. Okay, so there is like this old hunter chilling out on this rafter. He's got the red eyes. And so if you come over here, it will drop down and like try to attack us. Pretty sure. Oh, okay, there's the shadow. Yeah, so it was over there. I thought my timing was off on that for sure, but I'll take it. So yeah, if you missed it, his shadow was like kind of cast along this wall, so there is like some hint that something else is going on around this area. And from that crazed beast or crazed hunter, we get another vermin, which just reinforces like the more mad and filled with blood and things like that you are, the more beastly you become. And that's why we can gain vermin from those. It's a little bit unfortunate, like most of the red-eyed hunters and things don't drop vermin, but From never really like to make their like covenant items easy to get. It's kind of tedious and one of the more annoying parts of the games in my opinion, but if you're into it, like it's good content for like grinding stuff out, but if you're not into it, it's a real pain. So coming into this like next little section, something very strange will happen. Something will fall out of the sky and it will be a snail woman, and we'll have no idea what the hell that means until we get into the fishing hamlet and find that these kind of snail women are denizens of that aspect of the nightmare. And that will become relevant because since this falls from the sky here, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but once we access like the astral tower and go out into where the sky would be, that could just show that like the types of nightmares that we're in are layered and stacked on top of each other, and there might be like some ways for things to fall in between them. So Wenders might have had a point with like that one petrified amygdala that we found. It could have fallen from perhaps like the Nightmare Frontier, and that might have killed it. But so that's the snail lady falling very, very harshly onto the ground over here. She doesn't say anything. I don't think we can hit her. Maybe we can and we can kill her. Don't think she drops anything specific. I do remember like, and this is probably more like a programming error or something like that, that I'm pretty sure you can kill her with the choir bell. And probably the music box, since it does have like a hitbox. I'll just go ahead and test both. Where is it? Oh, it's going to be at the bottom. Oh, it's up here. You can wake her up with the Moderus whistle. Oh yeah, that's right. So I don't have that quite yet, but just gonna play with some of her AI. So this is a snail lady. She seems to be covered with this kind of parasitic growth on her. I think that could either be related to the cause parasite or probably just like the phantasms that are all over the fishing hamlet. She has a more feminine appearance, and she does kind of resemble Mother Cause herself with like the way that her face looks. So it's a bit unclear like whether or not like Mother Cause came from these kind of snail women or stuff like that. So let's try to use the music box first. Yeah, I'll just go like this. Alright, so no reaction. Choir bell. It's a nothing. And that's pretty much what I expected. I guess I'm just... You can wake her up with the Moderus whistle. Okay, so you can't interact with her until you use that. Okay, that's what it was. And I mentioned it before, but from here we get the whirligig saw. This is like a fan favorite DLC item. We like to call it a pizza cutter, because it certainly resembles one. And this is a trick weapon crafted by the workshop heretics, the powder kegs, and weapon of choice. Oh, and weapon of choice for the old hunter Valter, the Beast Eater. So this also confirms that Valter was a Beast Eater. This weapon pummels beasts in its mace form, but its true strength lies in its attached mechanical saws. These discs, lined with serrated teeth, spin rapidly, thrashing the flesh of beasts into fine shreds. Can I equip it? Nope, no strength. Otherwise I'd show it off. Okay. So I did mention like before I was gonna avoid coming to this hunter, and now that we've unlocked like all the shortcuts and things to do here, let's go and fight him. We'll probably die. So he's kind of chilling out behind that rock. He hits really hard. He bleeds a fascinating like combination of white and red. No. Oh, damn it. I was just... Should have dodged. I was just trying to shoot him with the gun. Well, we already cleared everything out, so it's really not too bad to get back to him. I just need to not get destroyed by the little bell holders. And then I think once we finish that, we'll go talk to Valter. I was afraid I did it again, like didn't get close enough to it. Because these guys are so big, it's I tend to forget, or like I poorly judge my distance from them with my like charged R2 for the visceral attack. The nice thing about that big old guy is he drops 10 quicksilver bullets really frequently. Oh no. Okay. I do wish like that their models stayed behind so we could examine them like once they get killed. They've kind of got like this really spooky, cosmically like white and purple mist looking like thing going on in the behind the bars of their masks, which would be cool to show off, but they're very different in terms of like the enemies we've faced so far. And of course that time he was no problem whatsoever. Whatever. Just had to look bad once. So the weapon that guy was wielding, we gain from right there. We get some more vermin. Trying to decide if I should probably try to walk across. Okay, I fell. Trying to avoid this hunter over here. It might not work out. I forgot you can kind of go across like the little rafters to get to that item over there. So just line my head up with the platform and walk down. And then we get the constable's garb, which is nice. I think. haven't shown this off yet. So that's the beast roar. You can make things fly away, including like projectiles, and it'll like knock hunters and things to the ground. Oh, wow. Probably gonna get mangled by dogs now. So if the loading screens weren't too bad, I would have just like used the bold hunter's mark to skip past all that, but it's a bit annoying trying to deal with all of that. So it was probably objectively longer to have just fought all those enemies, but at least we get blood echoes and some resources from it. But we're gonna go back to the Forbidden Woods and talk to Vulture. Level up, I think.
What is very well. Let me. Farewell.
Maybe we'll find Gehrman chilling out. I'm a bit skeptical. Like, I don't know if there's a good trigger for when he'll show up the second time to talk about Lawrence and Willem. We did see him the first time, which is nice. I tend to screw that up quite a bit, so. Yeah, let's just go with the vials in case you die on Ludwig. Now, I originally thought that you have to make Walter lose his, or like give you the position of the chief of the league before like the Moderus brother would attack you, but that's only because I always gave him 5 vermin at once. But apparently it might be only like 3, which causes the Moderus twin to become aggressive, or maybe it's just 1. Let me try to double check. So I'll give him 1, and then 3, and then like reload the areas each time before giving him 5.
Ah, how goes your hunt? Do not forget the League's mission: to cooperate with Confederates, find vermin, and stamp them out.
Well, maybe I needed to. I forgot that you don't hand them to him; you just have to stomp them yourself. So I may as well show off that like when you use the vermin and stomp on them, you don't gain any like what's called insight from doing it.
Ah, very good.
Okay.
You've crushed some vermin. I'm the master of the League. I can see it in your eyes. I'm pleased. This makes you a true fellow of the League, a Confederate. Now, take this stuff, a symbol of our oath, of our blood-drenched fate.
So from Vulture we gain the League staff, the League oath.
You'll be welcomed as a true Confederate. Go forth with renewed vigor. In short time, you will see how the mission takes hold of one's spirits.
It does interest me that he says he can find it by looking into our eyes. As I've pointed out before, like his helmet, it has only the 1 eye hole slot. And in Japanese, it's probably like a way to show that he's prejudiced, or like he leans to one side with his interpretations of things because he only has the one hole to see through, or the one way of looking at things. It might be a more literal way to like take that kind of imagery. And so yeah, just also the fact that he says that, like or that it will say that he no longer sees vermin is interesting to me in that regard.
You'll be welcomed as a true Confederate. Go forth with renewed vigor. In short time, you will see how the mission takes hold of one's spirits.
And so I do think that he probably does go mad to a degree. Like he stops being able to distinguish like the vermin from reality itself, and so that's just my interpretation of it. But sorry, I lost my train of thought, so I'll just go ahead and exit now to see if the like little twin shows up. It might be after 3. I just want to confirm it for myself. And then we'll like look at the staff as well. Alright, so he does not appear quite yet. So we've already used 1, 2, 3, and no insight, of course. There is that little model of like the vermin while you drop it. It's kind of fun to look at.
Hello, Confederate. Has your stomach not turned at the world of man, so wondrously wretched and brimming with unsightly vermin, much like our very own mission?
And so with his laughter there, it really seems as though like Walter has embraced the madness, where it seems like the characters like Gascoigne were resisting it, and that might be like the ultimate difference between the two. Even though Gascoigne was like hunting beasts in his mind, just like Walter was, it seems like he was trying to stay human with his like attachments to like the music box, and Walter's embraced those and embraced filth and impurity, and is taking it on for his own as a way to empower himself in his kind of never-ending hunt. And so that line like right there where he's talking about how the world of man is wondrously wretched and brimming with unsightly vermin, that's part of why I think like maybe to him like everything seems like vermin, and that's why he can't distinguish vermin any longer.
Hello, Confederate. Much.
Alright, so try to see if the little guy's out there now. I might need to reload. And his Japanese is very similar to what he says in English as well. So there's not really any differences where I'm drawing this kind of conclusion from. Still no Moderus twin. Okay, so it really must just be from gaining the helmet with Walter. So 3, 4, 5. This should be the end of Walter's questline. And he gives us his master's iron helm. If we attacked him beforehand, we just get like the one-eyed iron helmet, and there's just like some minor description changes. The master's one is more fleshed out.
Hello, Confederate. Your eyes say all. You've crushed vermin time and time again. You've seen the filth that varnishes the world of man. Yet, you are unbroken. You've the eyes of a hunter. You have blessed the League with your presence. This was my last, most pressing task. My Confederate, promise me you'll crush all vermin to rid us of our impurities for the sake of our fellows, all blood-stained hunters of the League. My Confederate, for the sake...
So that does show that like his quest is over. When we reload the area now, Walter will be gone, his helmet will be on the ground, and then the Moderus twin should attack us. And since we're closing in on about 3 hours now, I think we'll look at the items from Walter, and then maybe give Ludwig 1 or 2 or 3 good attempts, and then probably call it from there for today. And one reason why I do think like the idea of human dregs is relevant in like looking at the Confederates' ideas of what do you call it? The man's stagnation. I believe that dregs is probably a better reading of that, because Walter wants us to get rid of all of what would be like mankind's stagnation, and I feel like that kind of wording for it just doesn't sound supernatural. So I think just like the idea of it being tied to human dregs in Dark Souls 3 is probably like tied to what Walter's talking about now, like the sediment within man, the impurities that collect into the depths of man. Like he wants us to rid them from man, but of course that would be a never-ending mission of the League in trying to get rid of what makes man impure, like when man should be understood as being inherently impure to a certain degree. So I think that's why the League mission is never ending in the eyes of Walter, and why he kind of goes mad with his never-ending hunt. So we get the Master's Iron Helm. And maybe the little bastard will show up now. Yep, okay. Twice. A little bit messy, but that's fine. And from the Moderus twin, we gain the access to the Moderus whistle. So let's look at Walter's bucket head, which is right next to the constable set. So the Master's Iron Helm is an iron helm resembling an upside-down bucket. A single eye hole, or a single hole, allows one to peek out with a single eye, which is probably all that its original owner had. The Iron Helm is passed down among hunters, or among masters of the League, Walter had in fact lost the ability to see vermin long ago. So this does reinforce everything that I've been talking about so far. Walter lost the ability to see vermin. It does say that it has a single eye, and like as I've said before, like the Japanese for that would just mean like it's probably supposed to be tied to the idea of like prejudice or viewing things only one way. The part where it says its owner only probably had one eye is it purposely uses the kind of like hypothetical text style to indicate that that might not be true. So some people think that Walter wasn't the original master of the League. I tend to disagree with that, just because like he is the Beast Eater, and it said like the Impurity rune, like the League rune, was developed in the Forbidden Beast Eater, and since Walter is called the Beast Eater, I believe like it should be very clear that he is the first one. And so if we summon him for like the Ludwig fight or the Lawrence fight, he will have two eyes. So it's just like, I think reinforcing that like the craziness is all in his head, and even though he has two eyes, he's not really making use of a like objective sight, so to speak. I think that was it in relation to his helmet. So yeah, even though it says it's passed down amongst masters of the League, I think it's just more like, since Walter was the master and we have it now, like we're the master of the League, so I don't read into that as being like too big of a deal. So that's that, and then the whistle. Moderus Whistle. Whistle of the Moderus twins, denizens of the Forbidden Woods. The twins grew up alongside a poisonous snake and developed a silent, inhuman kinship. The poisonous snake grew uncontrollably, raised on a healthy diet of beast entrails. Even after their deaths, it is said to respond to the call of the twins' whistle from within the nightmare. Wender says, you're starting to wonder if the vermin could be unsightly, and another reason why people cover their eyes. You know, that is a good point to bring up in terms of like people covering their eyes all over Yharnam and in their imagery. I don't think I really thought about it too much in the context of like maybe they saw vermin and like that kind of writhing and wriggling caused them to freak out and cover their eyes. That's a really good idea. Thanks for bringing that up. Though the moon would be the main reason, and I don't remember if it's clear that only League members can see vermin. And yeah, it does say that only the League can see the vermin, and that's why Vulture says like others won't be able to understand it. But it might be possible that they've seen like kind of wriggling associated with vermin and just not known like what was causing it. It could have just been like something in their head, like the fake Yosefka sees writhing. So I think like that kind of concept is related amongst what happens in general to some of the characters. Of course, it might not happen to like the lower rung on the totem pole, like the huntsman minions and like the common folk of Yharnam, but I do think that is a pretty cool idea to connect to the people of Yharnam, like covering their eyes and things like that. So going back to the Moderus Whistle, I did say that there was a noticeable or a notable difference between the descriptions. In Japanese, it should be clear that the snake has already died, yet the snake responds to the sound of the whistle from the nightmare, and that's what it's trying to say. The final the final paragraph right there. So even after their deaths, like the Japanese isn't explicitly clear that whether or not it's referring to the twins or the snake, but since I think like the description mentions the snake as being the subject, I think it's logical to carry that idea forward. So the snake has already died, and so from the nightmare, the snake calls to the whistle. That's how I interpret this item. So, the fact that if the snake is dead and can call to being summoned by the Matters twins by their whistle, I think that could tie into how we can summon certain people that we've already killed, like well, I don't think we can summon the Matters twins after we've killed them, but like Henrik or Yamamura, we summon them after we killed them. I think that there is some evidence for that kind of mechanic somewhat making sense because of like what's mentioned in this description right here. So we're gonna try to go ahead and kill Ludwig first, and if we fail, that'll be okay. Oh, did I never light the lantern in the beginning area? That's kind of funny, really. Maybe before killing Ludwig, I will try to show off like the axe-wielding bell holder's attack first. Or I might just do that when we get to Lawrence later, but I'll probably forget, so it's probably smarter to do it now. So try to aggro this guy over here. So you can hear the bell chiming when he swings it. Trying to get him to do its grab attack. Maybe I need to hurt it a bit more first. After you do like a certain amount of damage, it'll swing its axe in the air. Okay, there we go. So it like kind of breathes this crazy mist at us, like the tendrils on its face come out and can grab us. It's a pretty cool technique. It's not very common for like the smaller types of enemies, like Scourge Beasts can grab us as well. So, oh, here's his buff. So like from like the head of the axe itself will like gain this like kind of rippling effect. I think from the bell, like you'll see the air ripple around it. He'll do more arcane style attacks. Oh no. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to show off with that guy. And those types of attacks are like kind of cosmic in nature and seem a little bit related to like phantasms, obviously, with its kind of a tendril covered face. So since this first guy is really nice to farm for some Quicksilver bullets, I'll just go ahead and do it. Does that guy have the echoes? Maybe? Okay. I'll try to see if it has our echoes. I'll try to like look at its glowing eyes if it has any. So this is its face, if you can really even call it that I've mentioned before. I don't think we can really see if it has like eye holes, but pretty cool to look at. guess it did have the echoes. Okay. And then leading up into this small area, we've got like an eye collector just chilling by. I don't think this one is covered in eyes like the Witch of Hemwick. So she's got a bit of a deformed face, and we can get a little bit of a better picture of her, like a little eye scooper. So this little figure right here is one I affectionately refer to as Skullabro. Whenever you kill him, he will always drop 5 blood vials, which is very nice when we go to deal with Ludwig, because it's really easy to use vials in this fight, and so having a decent amount to stock up on beforehand is pretty nice. And then from this we can summon Vulture, the Beast Eater. I'll give Ludwig a try first, and if we kill him like the first try, I'll just summon Vulture when we go fight Lawrence later on in the game. So they do, of course, like put a pebble here to distract players. Go, ooh, piece of candy, to just have like that eye collector sneak up behind you and grab you. And as we go into the area ahead, which does tie into the Grand Cathedral, we'll find out later. We've got a bunch of these skeletons, potentially like being the source of like the river of blood coming from this area over here. And then we get like one of the scariest and probably best bosses in the entire like Soulsborne catalog.
Please help us. An unsightly beast.
Holy crap, it's loud.
Terror loose. Ludwig Pickers is coming.
So Ludwig seems to have eyes coming out of the inside.
Have mercy upon us.
He's got 2 heads. One is kind of horse-like, and the other is missing. From that missing one, the neck is lined with eyes on the inside, representing a kind of relationship between beasthood, eyes on the inside, and things like that. That was a bit better than I was expecting so far. So that move right there can like one-shot pretty easily. Damn it. Okay. I had a pretty good run up in the beginning, just a little bit of a misplay toward the end. That really wasn't too bad, so I'll just go right back into it. So I personally think that Ludwig, maybe he wasn't supposed to have been like directly fused with a horse, but he is certainly horse-like. I believe he has enough limbs to match up with like a person riding a horse. It's really hard to show off as it is right now, but he's kind of got like these gangly little feet that are coming off of like one of its legs, and it looks like potentially like a person riding a horse just gone horribly wrong. And so I know there's like a lot of resistance to him potentially having fused with a horse, but he's got 2 heads and enough limbs to cover it, so it kind of makes sense to me. a lot of certain other people have compared the figure of Ludwig to I don't remember the name, but like one of the guardian demons of hell in like some of the Buddhist beliefs or more like Hindu beliefs. So he's got that kind of like acidic type of breath. I guess I didn't need to heal there. I completely whiffed those two attacks. Oh no. I got distracted by trying to like get the echoes rather than fight him. I thought I was sidestepped enough that he'd missed that. Alright, this should probably get us into the next phase. Yes, indeed. This is one of the coolest scenes. The cutscenes.
You were at my side all along. My true mentor, my guiding moonlight.
So in this phase, Ludwig changes from being a beast-type enemy to no longer being beast. I don't remember what he's classified, probably as like nothing. And I know Anethico has theorized that he probably has phantasms in his eyes. I don't think that's fully true. There we go. I know if you like stay like but towards his back, it becomes a lot easier to deal with him in this phase, as well as like most large monsters in the Soulsborne catalog. So that's the Ludwig fight. From him, we gain the guidance rune. Thank you for the GG. The Moonlight Sword, which he did call his true mentor in that cutscene, is on his back in the first phase. I forgot to mention that. I got reminded when we got to that cutscene, so I was going to point that out if we did die and get to him again. So now that we killed him, I'll just bring that up now. From the Moonlight Greatsword, Ludwig was able to focus his fears and channel them into it, and he was able to empty his mind of those kind of worries. And I believe that idea ties into how the executioners could have been inspired by Ludwig, where the idea is like blind faith and like ridding yourself of fears and desires and things like that would allow them to become strong hunters and blades for the healing church. I think that's where Logarius kind of got his adage or aphorism from. So, just look back at the chat real quick. What is the River of Blood's origin, by the way? I think it's like this kind of room that we're in right now. Otherwise, if it's not, we just kind of have to just take it as a feature of the nightmare and not really having a whole lot of explanation. Ludwig being a horse seems to be a manifestation of his personality more than anything. Yeah, since he is a knight, and like knights are supposed to be seen as like gallant and chivalrous, horseback cavaliers, I think that's a fair interpretation of like that kind of societal figure's downfall. Like, he thought he was being righteous and acting in good faith for the healing church, but he was just a pawn being used by them, and people mocked him for his time, and we'll find that out in a moment as well. Maybe I'll leave that to the next stream, just because my dog also really wants to go outside, so I might open with that in the next stream and talk about that in depth as well, and just kind of recap everything. So we'll probably just finish up reading this rune and then end. So yeah, I really like the idea of it being more of a symbolic thing. A horse that is mostly known as a very proud and beautiful creature, and then turned into maybe the most horrifying creature of all humans. Right, and thanks for the GGs. Yes, if you remember correctly, he referred to as a knight at some points. Riding a horse is also part of that knight imagery, right? So this is the guidance rune, and it's a carol rune discovered by the old hunter Ludwig, along with the holy moonlight sword. It boosts the amount of life recovered by rallying. When Ludwig closed his eyes, he saw darkness, or perhaps nothingness, and that is where he discovered the tiny beings of light. Ludwig was certain that these playful dancing sprites offered guidance, and emptied Ludwig of his fears, at least in the midst of a hunt. Let me double check that Japanese description. So... yeah, it's pretty close to being exactly the same. The tiny dancing sprites are a bit of a question. We could probably compare them either to phantasms, because this like little figure in the icon resembles that of a phantasm, or it could potentially be like a messenger. Not that we really see messengers dancing. I think just the idea of like the wriggling tiny light could be similar to what we find in, say, the Madman's Knowledges, or just kind of like some arcane features of the light of the Holy Moonlight Sword itself. And so, speaking of that, we will get into that as soon as we jump into the next episode and I give the recap of what happened this time. I would like to thank everybody who's been supporting me throughout the streams, people who have stopped by and lurked, people on YouTube who are watching this after the fact. I will try to remember to include the sources for the sculptures that I found, like the Michelangelo's Pieta, for like the Ludwig or for the YouTube description. So thank everybody again for stopping by. I hope you have a good day, and we will continue this tomorrow. I do stream from 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Times for about 3 hours, at least for the duration of this run. Have a good day, everyone.